Springer, right?
And we're off and running from New York, and what a great day it's been. The snow has stopped, but the fireworks are here. And I was on Get Up this morning, and I looked up, and there was a tweet from Stephen A. Smith, and I'm like going, what's Stephen A. Smith doing? I was talking about the end of the dynasty for Nick Saban, and Stephen A. said blasphemy out of the mouth of Finebaum on Get Up this morning about Nick Saban. Absolute blasphemy. Stephen A. has an important meeting to go to, but before his meeting, he decided to stick around. And we are just thrilled to have you here.
What's up, buddy? How you doing, man?
It's doing great.
Engaging in blasphemy that early in the morning. What's the matter with you, man?
And what I did later, I blamed you for Alabama's problems. For those of you who don't know, we've talked about it a few times, Stephen A. Went down to Alabama. And I would like to talk about that because I thought it was really unique. I was told by people close to Nick Saban that your talk was the best he has had at his tenure at Alabama, and he brings in everybody, including Mike Tyson this year, which I don't think went over that well. But when you do something like that, how do you approach it?
Well, I think about the first of all, I revere somebody like Nick Saban, incredibly accomplished, and I'm a guy that's big on discipline because I look at young minds and I recognize the kind of path that they're going to have to take en route to success. And what I appreciate about a guy like Nick Saban so much is that the no-nonsense approach that he appears to have, that tough veneer that obviously he wears unapologetically, that's the real world. That's the world that's going to await you. The family, the friends, the loved ones that, ultimately try to prevent you from falling into an abyss, or they're there to extend a helping hand to lift you up from the abyss that inevitably will come your way. That's not corporate America. That's not the working world. That's not the real world. That's life at home. That's life around loved ones and family. But when you go out there in the working world every day and it's dog eat dog and you're competing against people who you barely know, that has no blood lineage whatsoever, no kind of bloodlines, no relationship to you whatsoever, they're not going to give a damn about you. They're going to expect you to produce. They're going to equate whether or not or define whether or not you are a liability or an asset. So when to look at somebody like Nick Saban and to know that he's been successful, primarily being that way, I appreciate that. And then you see guys that are elite and what have you, and you're letting them know this is your honey. These are beautiful years for you, because the real world ain't gonna work that way. You go to the NFL, you ain't gonna win like this. You go out in the real world, you're not gonna win like this. You're not gonna be buffered and cushioned by a support base that's so profound that ultimately you feel like every day you're gonna be able to recover from whatever ails you because there's gonna be somebody up there to pick you up. That's not the way the world works. So I go into speeches with that kind of approach, reminding them of the importance of that. And in the case of Alabama, I opened up the speech by saying, y'all feeling good about yourselves? Everything's all right? And they said, yeah. I said, what the hell you doing feeling that way for when the residue was your national championship performance? You got blitzed. You got blitzed 44-16. You made Trevor Lawrence look like the seventh coming to Joe Montana. I got to go down to Clemson in a couple of months and apologize to them because I promised Dabo Swinney I was going to do that because of y'all. And I said, this is supposed to be what you're holding on to all season long to make sure that the season doesn't end the way that it ended. That's why even though they lost this past week in Auburn, if you're going to go down like that. Don't go down the way Alabama did in the national championship game like that. Don't go down the way Michigan went down to Ohio State. You go down like that.
Well, I mean, your own life is somewhat of an example of what I think you're trying to deal with them. And I know that time is short, but you are always in the spotlight. Your own personal conversations with ESPN about your future has been on every paper, every blog. When something like that is going on, you still work every day, and I mean every day.
Right.
How do you compartmentalize yourself? Because, I mean, it's one thing to tell a bunch of players to do something. It's another thing. You're not having anybody preaching to you.
Well, I think it's important to not be hypocritical, to know what you're speaking about, and then to turn around and to make sure, if you know that you're a living, walking hypocrite, I don't know how long you can last, just as a human being that way. When you know that you walk the walk, and then you try to inspire other people to do that, it does elevate the level of pressure that's on your shoulders, but it serves as a constant reminder to exercise discipline wherever you can. And so as a result of that, am I perfect? No. But I never go on air speaking about things that I don't do. I never sit up there and say, well, you know what, excuse me, don't date a woman when I know I'm dating. Well, don't have an alcoholic drink when I know that I have. Now, if I sat up there and when I say don't get drunk, I mean that because I don't get drunk. When I say don't use drugs, well, I can say that because I don't use drugs. You see what I'm saying? And so you got to make sure that your thing is consistent. But the other thing is recognizing the position that you're in and being humble enough to understand that. I am not just Stephen A. Smith. I am the son of Janet Smith. I am an employee of ESPN. And anything that I do, I'm cognizant of the fact that I recognize somebody greater than myself. And so when you recognize that, it's important because it disciplines you because you know it's not just about you. You know, look, I'm a dad. You know, I have 2 daughters. And the fact of the matter is that I mess up. Guess what? You know, they're going to pay a price. Because if I compromise their life in any way, if I compromise my life in any way, I'm compromising them. They are far more important. I've got 4 older sisters. I've got 13 nieces and nephews, okay? Thanksgiving and Christmas is a very, very busy time for me. All right? Let me tell you something right now. Anything that I do to mess up what I've worked so diligently to build throughout my life, it's not just me that's suffering. It's them. And so if you have a soul and you care about those things, you're going to be mindful of how you act and how you conduct yourself and how you go about the business of doing your job. And then when you go out and you speak to other people, you draw from that experience and you let them know, listen, this is not somebody, myself, Paul Finebaum, and others. We're not telling you or asking you to do something just because we're lecturing you. We're living it because we have to live it every single day. Yes, I'm in the news. I got a contract extension with ESPN, all of this other stuff. Yeah, that's nice, fine, and dandy. I don't recall ESPN saying, Stephen A., here's your money. They make me show up to work first. Then they pay me. So guess what? I have to show up to work and I have to perform. It's as great of an opportunity as it is. You recognize the fact that it could be snatched from you. And more importantly, in my case, remember, I was gone for 2 years. They did snatch it away from me. I did lose my contract. I didn't get a contract extension. I did lose my job. I was unemployed for a full year, living off my savings. I was off television for 2 full years. There were questions about whether or not I'd ever have an illustrious career at all. All of these things I remembered. And I hold on to that, and I remind myself, and I do something, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I went to Winston-Salem State University, and I used to work in Archdale, North Carolina, at the Greensboro News and Record. And I was an editorial assistant making $15,000 a year, living off of tuna fish and Kool-Aid, driving a 1985 Mercury Topaz in 1993, 94, okay? And I used to drive down this road, Main Street in High Point, North Carolina, and make a left off of Main Street and go to Archdale at this apartment complex. Once every single year, I go back. And I've done so for the past 25 years. Every single year I go back and I make sure, I don't care whether I fly in to Greensboro or Charlotte or drive down or whatever, I always make sure I drive that same path and I make that same left turn and I go and I park at the hill where the old apartment complex was and I just sit out there for about 15 or 20 minutes and I do nothing but reminisce about where I was at that particular moment in my life. Graduating from college, being an editorial assistant, wondering what my life is going to be and where I'm going. And at that time is when I lost my brother in a car accident as well. So all those memories come back, and I do it once a year just to make sure I never forget where I came from.
I know you have to go. I can't thank you enough. You know how I feel about you.
That's right, man. We'll get that. I'm going to come in there. Can I spend a half hour or something like that with Paul Finebaum?
Are you kidding?
On the Paul Finebaum show? We're going to make that happen soon.
Stephen, thank you.
All right, buddy.
Great
Take
to
it easy, Alabama blasphemous. Nick Saban's the greatest, man. He's the greatest, man. All right? Him and Dabo, though.
We're off and running.
Dabo brought Georgia into it, so I will, too. They've got the 21st ranked strength of schedule to Clemson's 65. Anyway, go ahead and respond to Dabo. They're saying no one wants the men.
Yeah, I think Dabo Swinney is the most annoying winner in all of sports. I mean, the guy just can't keep his trap shut. I mean, somebody just give the man a pacifier, send him to timeout, and we'll check in with him on December 28th when he finally plays a legitimate team during this entire college football season. Shots fired.
I was going to say, tell us how you real feel. Do you think he's right, though? Like, honestly, if they somehow, by some miracle of God, lose to Virginia this weekend, are they out?
Yeah, they would be out because of the perception of the ACC conference. and the lack of respect that people have for it, I think that's the hardest part of Dabo's job, is they don't have any wiggle room. They cannot have an off Saturday. Again, I say this all the time about college football. These are 18 to 22-year-old kids. They cannot be off because they can't afford a loss, where really every other team in the Power 5, maybe outside of the Pac-12, they can afford a loss and still be in the conversation. Listen, this is what Dabo's doing. He's talking to his football team through the media. He knows his football team is so great. He knows that they're going to handle the ACC championship against Virginia, and this is his way of keeping them on edge. He did this in the Florida State game this year. They were up 28-0. They're beating the doors off of Florida State. His kicker goes out and misses like a 30-yard chip shot field goal. This is not going to have any impact on the football game. Watch Dabo's reaction. Watch how he laces into this kicker. This is how he's keeping his football team sharp, that he knows has long-term aspirations. He knows they're not going to get tested every week. So he's got to do things to keep them sharp. Clemson's the best team in America to me. I've said that for 2 months now. Clemson is the best football team in the country to me. Quarterback's playing the best. Their running back's playing the best. Their defense is playing the best.
If that's the case, then Paul, then again, we all expect it's going to be a rout. But if that's the case and they pass the eye test, then how would they be kept out of the playoffs should they stumble?
Because they haven't played anyone. And Dan's correct. That's not really Dabo's fault. Texas A&M was supposed to be a good team. They were a 7-5 team. South Carolina went 4-8. Those are their two big non-conference games. And the ACC speaks for itself. I mean, they are playing the University of Virginia in football, not basketball.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Appreciate Stephen A. Smith for dropping by, and let's continue with more calls in a moment. We just during the TV pod played something I said this morning on Get Up about Dabo Swinney that I said here yesterday after his famous rant in the wake of the South Carolina win. Dabo was asked about this apparently today at his press conference in South Carolina, in Clemson, South Carolina.
I would never be upset at a person because he does a great job. I mean Paul Finebaum is great at what he does. What does he do? He which way do we need it to go? No, back that way. He's great at that. That's what he does. And he creates great conversation and great drama. So I would never be upset if somebody does an awesome job at what they do. Again, he's kind of said it before. We're the Red Sox, he's the Yankees. You know, you're not going to have the Yankees guys stand up and talk great things about the Red Sox. That's not what he's paid to do. So I think he does a wonderful job. But at the end of the day, listen, I don't know what he said, I don't really care, but I learned one of the best lessons I've learned is that you don't worry about criticism from people that you wouldn't seek advice from. So I get a lot of criticism. If it's somebody that I'd go sit down and seek some advice from, then I might listen to that.
Dabo Swinney earlier today. Let's get to the calls at 855-242-7285. Hope you're going to give us a ring. Let's get to the calls. And Derek is up next. Derek, good afternoon to you.
Hey, what's going on, Paul?
Hey there.
Yeah, Paul, first I appreciate you with your diverse show, how you got Stephen A. on. He lit a fire up under me, so I appreciate that. But, Paul, I'm calling today because I'm tired of these Alabama fans. I'm currently in Birmingham, and they talk about national championships, SEC championship, playoff appearance, first round All-Americans. We're tired of hearing this, Paul. Just accept the loss.
It's a good point. I mean, what else can you do, Derek?
Exactly. So, just hypothetically speaking, probably one good question for you. We had some guys on Facebook talking about if Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, and Utah lose, we know LSU and Ohio State 1 and 2. Who would be 3 and 4?
Man, listen, that's almost too much for me to comprehend here, Doug. I know there are a lot of tongue twisters out there, but thank you for the call. Really, really do appreciate it. Tom is in West Palm. You're on the air. Go right ahead.
Hi. Is this Mr. Finebaum?
Yes, it is. Thank you for calling.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking to you a minute ago. I didn't realize that. Yeah, first of all, I would like to say, I have one question. What about Oklahoma? You think they have a chance to make the top 4?
Yes, I do. Listen, I would put Oklahoma in over Utah. I mean, not personal against Utah. I've never been there and really don't care if I ever go. But I've been to Oklahoma, and I think Oklahoma is the better team. I mean, that's how I base it. I don't need a bunch of data. I don't need a bunch of BS about levels of data points. I know a good team when I see one. I don't think either one of them is an elite team, but I think Oklahoma is a better team.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I haven't seen Utah play all season, so right now that's telling me they can't be that great. If you're not.
Well, I watched them the other night against Colorado, and I mean, again, a lot of teams would look good against Colorado.
Well, okay, that's okay. That could be. That's a good point there. Also, I just want to talk about Steve Smith for a minute.
Sure.
What he was saying was great. I never give advice unless it's something I really know about. I mean, to my children, to friends. Unfortunately, I was one of those stupid ones that had to learn everything the hard way. So I always try to, advise people like he was saying he did. Whether it's I played golf a lot. I used to give a lot of advice in golf to my children, things like that. Never did I give advice unless I knew what I was talking about. And I really have a lot of respect for this guy, Steve Smith. I didn't know who he was until I saw him just now. I don't watch talk shows. I just started watching yours a week ago. I love it. I've learned so much.
Well, Tom, let me say this. I do appreciate it. And I made no secret that Steve and I have become very close friends, especially being up in New York as often as I have. I think he's the most unique broadcaster in the industry. And, yeah, you can read about what he's making with this new deal. And he's an uncharted territory, but he deserves it. Nobody works harder. Nobody's better prepared. Nobody, I walked in, I did his radio show about an hour and 20 minutes ago, and he was talking to the producers in here, and I mean, he was using more energy off the air than I've seen him use on the air. I mean, he's just passionate about everything he says, and that's what makes him authentic, and you can like him or hate him or whatever, but he doesn't bore you. And listen, this is a different type of show. I'm more interested in hearing from you than I am pontificating. But Stephen A., the show is about him. It's about his opinions. And he doesn't have any shackles on him. He doesn't have anybody sitting in a basement critiquing and looking for a word out of place so they can fire off an email or a reprimand. He just spits it out and tells the truth. And that's why I admire him so much. Let's go to Red Dog next. Hello, Red Dog.
Hey, Paul, how are you doing?
What's going on?
Oh, I think I'm on to this something with Clemson and little man syndrome because Dabo or Dudu gets on TV and starts talking about UGA. What does Dabo have to prove? He's won 2 national championships. Why does he care about Georgia? I mean, I don't get it why he's so hung up on the ACC. I mean, he should have nothing to prove in his mind. I mean, for him to get off, go 12-0 and sit there and then pick on Georgia. But, first of all, Georgia's beaten 3 top 10 teams. But, I mean, this guy has nothing to prove. I mean, everybody knows he plays a high school schedule all year. But, I mean, they do it every year, and they go 12-0, and they're healthy in the playoffs, and they win 2 national championships. So why do you think – and all these Clemson fans that call in your show, one after one, they call in there. They hate the SEC. They hate the SEC is better than the ACC. I mean, what do you think about that, Paul? Am I right?
Oh, listen, there's a theory in PR and marketing that when you don't have a good product to sell, quit talking about all the criticism. And all Dabo has done is called attention. Orlowski said earlier today he thought Dabo was speaking to his team. He doesn't need to speak to his team. His team doesn't have an important game until the end of December. This game Saturday is a waste of time. I mean, listen, I don't mean to be disrespectful to the ACC. I happen to have great admiration for John Swofford, the commissioner. When I see him, we have a great time together. He's a commissioner I feel like I can communicate with. But to me, nobody's interested in watching Virginia and Clemson Saturday night.
You're right. I mean, you can go on StubHub and look at the difference in ticket prices. It's night and day. I mean, they won't be able to fill 60% of the stadium wherever they're playing. So, well, I appreciate it, Paul. Hopefully I'll see you in Atlanta this weekend. Go Dogs. Talk to you soon. See you, buddy.
You got it, bud. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Harry is up next. Hey, Harry. Good afternoon.
It's Terry. How you doing, Paul? It's been a while. I'll call every so often. Can we talk
Terry.
about the championship game? I mean,
Sure,
this
whatever
is
you want.
the SEC network, isn't it?
Listen,
It is an
I'm not
SEC
being
championship
disrespectful to
game.
you, but people, we take calls one after another. People can talk about whatever they feel like they would like to talk about. We'll be in Atlanta
messing with you,
Friday.
Paul.
Well, and I'm just being very serious though, because I get that all the time. I don't tell anyone what to say or what not to say here.
Okay. Just, can we this Alabama, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about the championship game, okay? Now, why do teams not like to play Navy or Army when they play them? It doesn't matter what teams they are. They hold the ball. They run the clock.
Sure.
They shorten the game. Okay? So, Georgia, if they run the ball a little bit, can shorten the game a little bit. That helps. Maybe put some points up. That helps. Slow down LSU a little bit. That helps. So, I think they got a great chance to win. Now, I'm sure I'm the only one that thinks that. And I'm not a homer. I take all my meds every morning. But, I'm saying to myself, I watched this team. They play good, sound football, Paul, and you know it.
Listen, Terry. Listen, I've seen Georgia play a million times this year. They're an excellent football team. They're one of the top football teams in the country. I think if it hadn't been for all the injuries, I might feel better about their chances. But I appreciate your call. King is up next in Atlanta. Hello, King.
How you doing today, Mr. Finebaum?
We're doing great. Thanks you for the call.
Just a couple of things. All this power ranking and stuff. After all the coach firing in the SEC, I was telling a few guys and hoping you'd agree that this year the SEC from top to bottom is as weak as it's been in at least 10 years. And that really includes some of the teams that's ranked in the top 20. I just don't see them being that effective a football team to have a
once you get past I think the 5th or 6th team in the SEC, you literally go off the face of the earth.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's what I was trying to communicate all weekend to the fellows, and naturally with the SEC's reputation, it's hard to convince anybody after a couple of beers or so. The other thing, the Clemson coach, people are saying he's crying about Georgia. Now, I'm a Georgia fan, born and bred, but the truth is the truth. As soon as we lost to South Carolina, I thought that was it for us. And as soon as you turned around, we were cheering again because we knew we had a chance. And at that time, it was among a bunch of undefeated teams. And as I say, this power ranking, I watch football all day Saturdays. And after you get past the top 4 or 5 teams, the rest of the nation top 50 are probably relatively competitive with each other, depending on where and when they're playing. It's not a lot of distance between them. And another thing, been trying to get in touch with Stephen A. Smith for years. Love him to death, but a couple of years ago, he disappointed me terribly when he came on the air for more than a week before any decision had been made about Tua and Hurts in Alabama, before the season spring practice had even started for the coaches to start evaluating the kids. And he made a statement over and over again that Jalen Hurts couldn't throw a lick. I've been watching the kid since he was in high school. I can throw a lick.
Yeah, listen, I heard that, King, but that was Stephen A's opinion, and guess what? He happened to be correct about Tua being the starter. Thank you for the call. Appreciate it. We're taking a break. More to come on this Tuesday.
Joe Burrow and the LSU Tigers won at Bama by hanging 46 points on them. It snapped Alabama's 8-game winning streak against LSU. A week later, we saw what happened with star quarterback Tua Tagovailoa injuring his hip against Mississippi State, an injury that would require season-ending surgery. Mac Jones takes over at quarterback, and he was at that position this past Saturday in the Iron Bowl when Auburn put up 48 points in an upset over their in-state rival, essentially knocking Alabama out of playoff consideration. And again, we are now entering something we've never seen before, and that is a college football playoff without Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide. And the great Paul Finebaum is with us here. And I've heard it speculated. I will ask it to you, whose opinion on this I think I value more than anyone's. Do we have to start getting used to this? Is the era of Nick Saban dominating college football coming to an end?
Yes, it is. And it's been happening very slowly for a couple of years. But I think over the last couple of months, we've seen it. It started with the 28-point blowout to Clemson. Saban said, we have to get the Alabama factor back. It didn't happen. It has been a really disappointing season. People are saying, are you kidding? Alabama went 10-2, and they're still ranked in the top 10. But that's the difference at Alabama. A couple of reasons why, Greeny. Staff turnover has been a constant churn, especially on the defensive side. Recruiting is an issue. They're still number 2 or 3 in the recruiting, but they're being pressed hard by Clemson and Georgia. And I'll say this. I know that everyone will be surprised to know that I covered the end of Bear Bryant's tenure about 38 years ago as a young reporter. Yes, young. And I saw some of the very same signs. He's considered the greatest coach of all time. Saban surpassed him. It looks very similar.
To the end of Bear Bryant's era, because slowly but surely people chip away. If I were to agree with you in this circumstance, I would say that I don't believe Alabama has come back to the pack. I think they sort of set a template, a blueprint that others have followed and others have sort of caught up. Dabo Swinney has caught up. Georgia is coming on strong. Ohio State, perhaps you could say, has caught up. What do you see?
I think it's crazy to sit here and say that Nick Saban and Alabama are done. I mean, 2 years ago, he wins the national championship. Last year, they lose one game in the national championship.
And we're not saying he's done. We're saying this dynasty window is closing very tightly.
They're the youngest team in America. No team has played more true freshmen than Alabama. Guess what happens in 2 years? All those true freshmen are going to be juniors. They're going to be really good football players. The passion, did you watch Saban on the field? Sure. Even in that loss. Does this look like a guy who's going to lose his dynasty? The passion that he has on the football field?
One last point, Dan. The difference between then and now is we're talking about this on a daily basis. That is a problem when you're a legendary coach and you're 68
I think when you're great, Nick Saban's the greatest college football coach ever, arguably. When you're great, you decide when it's over.
Yeah.
And I don't think you let others.
I don't know.
You sound like an Alabama fan.
Welcome back. Glad you're with us here on just a spectacular Tuesday afternoon. And we'll get back to the calls at 855-242-7285. Jason is in Mississippi. Hello, Jason.
How are you today, Paul?
We're doing great. Thank you.
Hey, I tell you what, I'm looking so forward to Saturday. It's going to be a great day. The only team Auburn actually outperformed, LSU gets to play.
Appreciate the call. Thank you. Bo is up next in Georgia. Hey, Bo, you're on the air.
Hey, Paul, first-time caller there. How you doing?
We're doing great. Thank you.
I heard somebody on ESPN that talked for a living saying that Georgia had no chance against LSU.
Who was that?
I'll tell you who has no chance against LSU: Alabama, Auburn, Florida, etc. In the words of a legendary high school coach in Georgia, Billy Henderson, it can be done, Paul. It can be done. I imagine Georgia will show up and suit up and play, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, well, I hope it's a good ball game. I've been cheering for them since 1965, so we'll see what happens. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much. Bob is in Ohio. Hello, Bob.
Hey, Paul. How you doing? Watch your
We're
show
doing
all the
great.
time. I've talked to you before quite a
Thank
few
you.
times. Great game Saturday. You know, I'm a big Buckeye guy, okay? I've told you that in the past, and I'm happy with our season so far. But I'm calling you about the Alabama-Auburn game was excellent. My cousins, you know, they're from the South. Well, you know, we're all – I've been up here all my life, but we, you know, all grew up, started in the South. And they all are between Auburn and Alabama. They love both, you know. They don't – you know, they love one or the other. But as soon as Auburn won, I got calls. And my cousin, you may know, David Neal, he's a weatherman. He used to be in Birmingham.
Oh, sure. I know David well. You bet.
Yeah, David texted, said, I'm in Colorado. Nobody's watching the Iron Bowl. I go, you got to be kidding me. I'm up over in Ohio just going nuts. You know what I mean? Loving it. I mean, it's just the greatest game. You know, I mean, Ohio State, Michigan used to be, but it's just lacking right now. You know, I think it'll get good again eventually. But at any rate, as far what I want to really talk about, because I got to watch what I say with all my cousins listening probably. This year, what would really be interesting, what I'm looking forward to, I mean, I'd love to see the Buckeyes win the national championship, but I think the fact that they got to meet Georgia with them having Fields and then, you know, playing Georgia, and then LSU with Burrow and playing against, that really is interesting, is it, with the quarterbacks all switching schools? What do you think?
Yeah, listen, I mean, I think it's a fascinating proposition. Now, yeah, Georgia would be the least likely to play for the national championship, but
well, I think so too. But they're pretty dang good still. You know
what? I don't think that's as big a deal because I think there's a pretty good chance Fromm's coming back anyway, which I think would confirm Kirby's decision. I don't think Kirby ever doubted that he made the right call, and I don't think anyone today should doubt it.
He shouldn't. And Ohio State. I mean, I like Burrow. I'm not gonna like him when they play Ohio State, but I'm happy he's doing well. You know, you can't. You look at Meyer. Haskins is starting in the pros right now, so I mean, you know, he had his pick kind of right, and this guy's done a great job there, and Fields has been wonderful for us. I mean, he's fit in perfectly, so nobody could complain, right? That's the way I look at it.
Thank you very much. Great to have you on. Let's continue with more calls. And Tim is in Mississippi. Hey, Tim.
Buddy?
We're doing well.
You sound a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I'm really great. I can't believe that the magic wand finally made me well.
Well, Paul, I'm going to sum up the regular season. I'm going to tell it like a little story, but it'll be real quick.
Okay.
So, Dabo, you know, you had me and Paul there for a couple of weeks ago talking pretty good about you. Then you had to go open up your little mouth. So, just tell you like it is. Now you know how the other teams is that went undefeated all year long, and the committee told them there was no chance in hell they were going to get into the playoffs. Jump over to the Egg Bowl. John Cohen, you done a good job, buddy. Would have lost the game if one of the Sharks wouldn't have peed on the field. What'd you do? You give Moorhead another year. Ole Miss was smart enough to know that they could hire the producers on the Paul Finebaum show to go in and beat you the next year. So real good job. At the end of the year, you know, Ed, he's smiling ear to ear now. At the end of the year, good job. You know, your offensive coordinator and your AD made you do your job, so look what you got. Alabama, just relax. You got Nick Saban. You're going to be okay.
Well, thank you very much. Listen, I was having a hard time hearing you, so I do apologize. Let's continue with Nancy, who is in Florida. Hey, Nancy, you're on the air.
Hi, Paul. I had the pleasure of meeting you on Friday at
thank you, Nancy.
At Timmer's Corner.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I do remember that.
Did you get an opportunity to see the Opelika or the Auburn Opelika news?
Yeah, I stayed at the conference center, and they had a stack of papers, and there we were.
And there we were. And I just wanted to tell you, I know that I had that, I gave you my spiel on Friday that I just felt in my heart of hearts that Auburn was going to win. And I had planned this trip to Auburn for 8 months. And I got in my seat. I'm on the first row in section 11, looking right at the end zone. I'm covered with Alabama fans, a few Auburn fans in that section. And I was yelling, "Go, Bo," because I was so excited. And an Alabama fan started mocking me.
Oh, my goodness.
And, you know, the only thing, and I'm a pretty nice person. I think I even told you that on Friday, that I think I'm a pretty good person. And I so wanted to fire back. And the lady sitting next to me that I didn't know, she goes, "Let it go. Be the bigger person." So I didn't even look in his way. But you know something, Paul? I think something that Alabama fans have lost over the years, starting back with Bear, you have to have some humility. You can't expect to win all the time. Even if you've got a great team and you've got a great coach and, you've done it the year before, sometimes you just got to have a little bit of humbleness. And that's really all I have to say. I am an Auburn fan only because my daughter went there and graduated in 2012, and I'm the one who ended up falling in love with everything Auburn. So,
well, Nancy, let me say this. I thoroughly enjoyed meeting you at Toomer's Corner, and it turned out I was not right. I was wrong. But you were so
No, I never tell people if they're right or wrong.
But I will admit it. You were so gracious, and thank you for making my day. We're up against a break. We are coming back with a lot more. We'll look at the analytics of tonight's college football playoff reveal. Probably the least interesting one of the group. It's really we're talking about positioning, and most people think it will be Utah and Oklahoma either at 5 or 6. So we'll talk to other.
I remember a few years ago listening to Bill Moose talk about the Nebraska opening, and Scott Frost is he's set to play in this conference championship game, and meanwhile we're hearing nothing about the Nebraska coaching search, not even guys who have been interviewed for the job, and all the while you knew that Frost already had the deal in place, and it was kept so quiet because he was like, hey, just let me have my space here. I want to play in a conference championship game. I'm sort of waiting for that to unfold. Now I realize that there are athletic directors who are very impatient, and understandably so because of the new early signing period. These guys want to get their head coaches. They want to get their, whatever athletic directors out there, that's sitting there in the middle of December that still has to make a head coaching decision is got to be panicking. Alabama is in a different place than it was, 3 years ago. I think we can say that with certainty. Seeing the way that they've lost these games where, I know that they had the 2 pick sixes, but you threw out the stat earlier about, the fact that they played 2 top 25 teams this year, and both of them put up record-setting numbers against the Saban defense at Alabama. And, those numbers are partially skewed because of the pick sixes. But at the same time, the game is just different in terms of, the way that we evaluate defenses. And teams are scoring more, obviously, than ever against Nick Saban coach defenses. I'm not writing him off yet. And I know that's such an easy thing to do right now, but go back and look at those quotes from 2014. Go back and look at what people were saying about Saban and, Urban Meyer passing him up and everybody else passing him up. Teams kind of passed him by. He had his run. He had, the titles in, 3 or 4 years, all that stuff. I get it. But, I think that this is a different situation right now. I think that we just need to kind of change our expectations of Alabama on a yearly basis. They're not the unbeatable force that they were. Obviously, Auburn was able to beat them dealing with a backup quarterback. Of course, Alabama was. But this is just a different scenario. And I think that right now Alabama is still an extremely good program. I'm not going to write Alabama off, as long as Saban's on those sidelines. And as of right now, we have nothing to believe that he's going away anytime soon. But, it was sort of alarming to see Auburn continue to bounce back with a true freshman quarterback and find a way to win that game. And I think right now, if you're Alabama, you're just trying to figure out, all right, how are we going to maintain our place at the top list, the college football world? Because it is still just 2 losses. Let's not pretend like it's, they're having some 8-4 season or something like that. Now, Alabama was still considered to be in the playoff hunt. They were still a top 5 team last weekend. I'm not writing them off. I know many people are right now.
Welcome back. We continue. Let's grab Bill, who is in Georgia on this Tuesday afternoon. Hello, Bill.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
I am doing well, thank you.
Good. I'm a big fan of your show, and I enjoy tuning in and listening to you each day. Hey, I got a couple of thoughts on Clemson. I know they've been in the news a good bit, and just wanted to point out, hey, in 2016, they played 3 ranked ACC schools, all wins. They played at Auburn, tough opponent, and won. In 2017, they played 4 ranked ACC schools and won, and played Auburn at home and won. And it's pretty safe to say that this year and last year, ACC is definitely down. There's no dispute about that. But I do believe that Clemson's margin of error is extremely slim, even more so slim than any other school in the country because the schedule's so soft. They cannot afford a loss, unlike schools from the SEC or the Big 12 or Big 10. Now, I think one thing with their schedule, Clemson, everyone's saying, hey, well, Clemson doesn't schedule anybody. They really do. They got a home and home with LSU scheduled. They have a home and home with Georgia scheduled. 8 to 10 plus years out. They have to play at Notre Dame next year. So they're not afraid of playing anyone, but I think the point that I'm trying to make is if they played nobody and got to the playoffs and got smoked, then you could say, hey, they don't deserve to be there because they don't play anybody. But they play the schedule at hand, and they get to the playoffs and just dominate. They can line up and play with anybody in the country. They're not afraid of anybody. They'll play anybody any given day. So why do you think they just get the continued criticism throughout the year for the schedule they're playing?
Well, I don't think they have gotten criticized until this year. I mean, last year I felt like going to A&M was a pretty significant game when you also have South Carolina. So I'm not really critical of the games that they control. They don't have to play that extra game with South Carolina. They do. I think that's really good because South Carolina has become really a terrible football program. It's really about the teams in the league they're really, it's not their fault. You laid it out. I mean, the Notre Dame game next year will take care of everything. And I mean, my argument today wasn't about the schedule. It was just about Dabo whining about nothing. I said it. I have really virtually nothing else to add. He responded to what I said. I feel like it's been a good day.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, listen, I mean, if you heard what Dabo said, he said he liked me. He praised the work I do. And I feel the same way about him. I think he's one of the best coaches in the country. So for those who missed it, this was I spoke about Dabo this morning on ESPN, and Dabo responded.
Finebaum is great. Paul Finebaum is great. Paul Finebaum is great. Paul Finebaum is great.
I have to take Dabo into my next contract negotiation. Let's go to Jim. Not that one. I mean, this is a normal Jim coming up next. Hey, Jim.
Good evening, Paul. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Just a question. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. I'm an Auburn fan. It seems like Gus is always on the hot seat no matter what. But I'm just thinking of Texas A&M, what Jimbo Fisher's contract is. Is he getting a free ride at A&M? You go back and look what Auburn's done with Gus his first 2 years. We have beat Saban 3 years, he has. So I just wanted your thought on it.
Well, listen, I think until Saturday you could give Jimbo Fisher a pass and say that he had the most difficult schedule I've ever seen. But I will tell you flat out, what I saw Saturday night in Baton Rouge was beyond embarrassing. And as someone who has always defended Jimbo Fisher, that's inexcusable. And I think he will begin next year in a very awkward spot that he better win. At $75 million, 7-5 doesn't cut it. And I think he will win. He's got a really good team coming back. He has a much easier schedule, but there will be pressure on him.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your call.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to hear from you. I mean, listen, I think you have to be realistic. He didn't take over a great situation. I never thought A&M had a chance this year to I mean, of the games they lost to Clemson, Alabama, LSU, they weren't going to win any of those games. The game they maybe had a shot at winning was Auburn at home, and they failed miserably in that one as well. 3 hours to go.
Paul Finebaum is great. Paul Finebaum is great. Paul Finebaum is great.
Second hour is live, and welcome as we continue with more phone calls in 855-242-7285. If you're just getting on board, you missed one of the better interviews of the football season. Stephen A. Smith stuck around and sat right here next to us for a couple of quality minutes, and hope you were able to hear it. Otherwise, maybe we can distribute that later for those who missed it. Let's get to the calls at 855-242-7285, and Mike is in Arizona. Hello, Mike.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey there, how are you?
Doing good, man. Love your show, love Stephen A. Smith, of course, and I have a question about Jim Harbaugh. Is there a reason why he still has a job? I mean, he's going up against a first-year Ohio State coach he should have never lost to. regardless of, they got the talent or whatever. And I think, honestly, in my opinion, he's scared of these big games. And the reason I say that is a couple of years ago, he was at Iowa in their pink locker room, and he changed it all to like camo because he lost there once when he was playing. I just feel like he's scared, and he's not the coach that he kind of came in to be. And I know he's got a lot of wins and bowl games and stuff, but he just doesn't get it done. And the whole big point of being a Michigan fan is not losing to Ohio State. And they haven't won since the Lloyd Carr era, which they fired Lloyd Carr for the same thing.
Mike, if Michigan cared about beating Ohio State, Jim Harbaugh would have been fired Monday. They don't care. And the reason why they don't care is because the program makes a lot of money. They have a good brand, and I think they have come to accept that Jim Harbaugh is as good as they can do.
I don't think so.
Well, let me ask you this. You're the athletic director at the University of Michigan. If you fire Jim Harbaugh, which direction do you go?
Well, there's a lot of maybe the Boise State coach, somebody that's actually gets the players a little bit more.
Come on, you're going to bring the Boise State coach into Michigan?
Their former coach, yeah, the one that won a championship.
You're not. No, well, I mean, Mike, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but if you have followed the Chris Peterson story, you would have heard him say today that he was burned out. He didn't have it anymore, and you're going to take a guy that's burned out at a low pressure job like Washington, where you can win 8 or 9 games. If you win 10 or 11, they think you're great. If you don't, they'll go, okay, we'll try better next year. It's Washington. That guy's not going to the University of Michigan. I mean, it takes a serial killer to go to Michigan and try to beat Ohio State the way things are right now. Appreciate the call. Antoine is in Michigan. You're on the air.
Hi, Paul. How you doing?
We're doing great.
Thanks for taking my call. I was going to talk about the playoffs, but then I heard your first caller, and okay, let's look at Jim Harbaugh's record and stuff, and look what he inherited. There weren't no skill positions. Ohio State has the skill positions. They got the players at skill positions.
Hey, hold on a second there, Antoine.
What's up?
I don't care whether he inherited a program that had been on the death penalty. He's been there 5 years. Are you telling me in 5 years at the University of Michigan you can't put a team together?
You can put a team together, Paul, but you got to put it. It takes wrong one built in a day, and you got to get those skilled players.
He has recruited fairly well.
Yeah, but he didn't. The skilled players, when you go in there and get Sweeney did, go in there in Alabama and get that number one receiver. When you go in there and steal players, we used to get players from all over. But Rich Rod dealt us in. Dealt us in. So you got players there, and you got to get rid of those players. But what I'm saying, you have to get the players, the skilled players, to come there. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have a good running back for the past couple of years. You know what I'm saying? So he worked with what he got, but he's getting the players there now. So
Well, listen, a couple of years ago, Jim Harbaugh landed Rashawn Gary, who was the number 1 player in the country. He landed, I think, the number 4 class overall. The bottom line is that elite players really don't want to go to Michigan.
No, is that an offensive player, though?
Rashawn Gary was a defensive player, I believe.
Defensive end. Defensive end. We're talking about offensive players. That's what we getting beat at, the skilled players, like the receivers.
That's not my problem. That's your problem.
I know it's not. I know it's our problem, but I'm saying, he getting the players there.
Listen, Antoine, let me give you some advice, okay? You're a Michigan fan, right?
Yeah.
I think you just need to accept mediocrity. And you know why I think you need to accept mediocrity?
Okay.
Because your administration has not only accepted mediocrity, but embraced it. I am no longer going to criticize Jim Harbaugh. It's a waste of time for me. I thought the they have gone after every quality position imaginable. Jim Harbaugh went to Rome. He went to Normandy. He went to the moon. Come on. I mean, nobody commanded the stage and had more people panning after him to cover it for ESPN. Or I mean, that is just ridiculous for you to say what you're saying. Just accept the fact that elite players no longer want to there. Okay.
Okay, so who are you going to get?
I don't listen. Antoine. You're not going to get anyone because Michigan is going to keep Jim Harbaugh.
Okay.
Now listen. Hold on a second. If I were the athletic director, he would have been fired Monday. But I'm not the athletic director. I'm a lowly talk show host.
Who are you going to get though, Paul?
I would be ready to hire someone. I mean, athletic directors' jobs are to raise money and hire and fire. And after the Wisconsin game, which I think was the second or third game of the year, I would have compiled a list. I would have compiled one after the Army game, and I would have already named one. Unless my guy was playing in a conference championship game. But who are
you going to get?
Since
everybody wants to fire.
Antoine, don't keep asking me the same question. Who are you going to get? You go out and you hire a big time coach.
You want to say he wasn't no good?
I'm just trying to tell you that your program is a loser, and you've accepted mediocrity. So just accept it. Just have a good no. You have a good time every year. You lose to Wisconsin. You'll lose to Notre Dame on the road. You'll beat them at home, and then you'll just get your backside blown off every time on that final Saturday. I mean, it's really not a big deal. Just accept it. You are Ohio State. Now, I better not say that.
Look, we're going to get
it's okay. It's okay to be, I don't know how to say this without getting fired. It's okay to, you're just not, quit trying to be elite, okay? Quit trying to be successful.
No, you got to work.
Be happy. Be happy with 9-3. Be happy with, getting to a New Year's Day bowl and having Florida shred you by 4 touchdowns.
I bet you we beat the back off. We beat the hell out of Florida. Get out of here.
Antoine, I just got through watching that game last year in Atlanta. Why don't you go back and watch it again, okay? Dan Mullen left Jim Harbaugh on the side of the road naked, and it wasn't a pretty sight.
Okay, but we beat them before that, though. The year before that, we beat them. So, what you talking
Antoine,
about?
I don't give 2 rips about what happened the year before that. I'm talking about what happened last year in the bowl game.
Okay, last year.
Repeat after me, Antoine. Antoine, do me a favor, okay? Will you just do me this one favor? Come on. Would you follow my lead here for 1 second?
What's your lead, Paul?
Repeat after me. Michigan is a loser program.
Michigan is a winning program.
No. Michigan is a loser program.
No,
we accept mediocrity here. We will no longer be elite. Jim Harbaugh is a good coach, but every year he will take his annual beating by Ohio State. By the way,
we will be back.
I cleaned that up for the family audience.
I'm about to have you eat crow.
You're not going to make me eat crow.
We'll be back.
How long do you think, if Jim Harbaugh is there for 15 years, the record will be 0-15 against Ohio State?
Please, come on, Paul. You smoking dope.
Well, I'm doing that, but I'm also spitting out the truth. We'll take a break. More to come. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285.
Paul, I have to ask you this. Alabama's loss in the Iron Bowl means there will be a new number 5 team. So who do you think the playoff selection committee will put in the place?
Terry, I believe they will go with Utah. I mean, it's splitting hairs between Utah and Oklahoma, but it just seems like Utah has maybe one more data point in terms of teams they have played. For me, I would go with Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma would beat Utah. First of all, I'm not even sure Utah is going to get past Oregon Friday night in the Big 12 championship game. I just don't think they've really been tested. Remember, the SC game went sideways for them. And they're a really good team, but I don't think they belong in the playoffs.
All right, and that's the Pac-12. How do we feel about them? Meanwhile, Ohio State, let's talk about this, and LSU are 1 and 2 respectively in the rankings, both playing in their championship games on Saturday. What are the chances with a loss that both or either would drop out of the top 4?
I don't think either one has to win. I think Ohio State has done enough this year as the most complete team in college football to get in even with a loss, and I think the same identical thing can be said about LSU. It's so strange that this is the weekend we wait for, and quite frankly, neither team has to win, and if they lose, they'll still get in. Only in the college football playoff. Maybe we should expand it just to make sure more teams can lose and get in.
I sense that you're not as excited as we are about championship week. Should we be excited?
Well, Carrie, yes, it's interesting, but I think some of the drama went out with Alabama because if Alabama was going to possibly get in without playing in a conference championship game, they would been pitted against Utah and Oklahoma. So I think that took some of the air out. And quite frankly, with what I said about LSU and Ohio State, we're really looking at the Big 12 and the Pac-12, and I don't think anyone in America that sits in chairs like mine think that Oklahoma or Utah have any chance against Clemson, Ohio State, or LSU.
You mentioned Clemson. Let's talk about that. What's the likelihood that they stay in the top 4 if they're upset by Virginia?
The likelihood of them staying in if they got upset would be the same as me appearing on the cover of Cosmopolitan magazine without a shirt.
I think there is a chance, Paul.
There's a chance, but it's pretty much zero. It's infinitesimal to try to keep magazine sales up. I mean, they have no resume, Carrie, so they're not getting in with a loss. No chance.
No chance. Look, Paul, I think that you could easily be on the cover of any one of these
you have more friends
GQ.
than I do, so give an old guy a shot. Welcome back. We are here on this Tuesday afternoon. A lot going on. Let's talk to Chris, who is in Tennessee. Hello, Chris.
Paul, yesterday we talked about the horrible way Ole Miss fired Matt Luke. We agreed on that.
Yes, we did.
When Matt Luke was hired, the boys rejoiced and went into jubilation because he was very well liked. I think they have set the Ole Miss program back probably 2 or 3 years because kids like Plumlee and Ely, who are stars, Ely a 5-star, they are baseball prospects for the pros, and they will not stay probably in the football program. The other thing I want to say to you is that, look, one thing that affected Luke's firing was a horrible loss to California when the referees from California mishandled the end of the game, and they've never shown a film down the goal line of the last pass reception. They said it was not a touchdown, but they haven't shown a replay of it, which ESPN and all of you show over and over and over every game. I would like for you to petition the NCAA to make the referees from the West Coast release those films.
Good question. Chris, thank you. Thank you very, very much. Gary in Georgia is up next. Hello, Gary.
Hey, Paul. How are you doing?
We're doing well.
Good. Thanks for taking my call. Looking forward to this Saturday. And before I go any further, I just want to make a prediction. I know you mentioned yesterday you're not ready to make a prediction about the Georgia LSU game, but I'm going to tell all the bettors out there the final score is going to be Georgia 23, LSU 16. And I hope to be the case, simply because I want a shot at Clemson so bad. I want to play Clemson. I know that some of the callers earlier, they kind of stole my fire. I want to ask you though, what is going on with Dabo? I've never known him to act like that or say things like that. What's going on with Dabo?
I think Dabo's just frustrated because he wins a national championship and everyone just not only ignores his program but comes down on it. And I just think the other night it reached a boiling point. That's a rivalry game.
Right.
It should mean something, but let's be honest. I mean, Will Muschamp has done such a mediocre job at South Carolina that beating them even at Williams-Brice just didn't matter to anyone.
Right, exactly.
So I think he just went off saying, hey, by the way, I mean, this team beat Georgia. I mean, I understood his argument. I think if he had done it in simplistic terms, but I mean, he had to go Dabo on everyone, which
right.
I said what I said.
And I just, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you don't. You have to be, I guess, pretty equal no matter what you have on your mind. But I don't know. I just, I get kind of tired of hearing the ACC talk about this and talk about that. And you know, I was just telling my son here a little while ago, my dream would be for the ACC for a year to come over and play an SEC schedule, play 8 games, let them pick out the 4. You know, let each team, as long as you could, pick out another SEC team to play. You do that for your 4 games, and we'll pick somebody for you to play.
Listen, by the way, Gary, it wasn't that long ago that I thought the ACC was really trending in the right direction, but I'm not really sure, what happened. Miami imploded. North Carolina went backwards, maybe coming back a little bit now. NC State had a couple of good years. Duke was good. I mean, this year, Louisville, everyone just crashed and burned this year.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know.
I think it was all the excitement over that new network.
What's that now?
I think it was all the excitement over the ACC network. People were distracted.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm sitting here thinking, I was talking to my son about the championship, the ACC, and and just hear Clemson and Virginia. And I'm not knocking on Virginia, but they're not any kind of a league.
Listen, Virginia has done a good job of rebuilding a program. I mean, they went to
they have
the Belk Bowl last year and just destroyed South Carolina. I mean, that impressed me.
Right, exactly. But I just I don't know. I'm a fan of Dabo's. I think he's a good man, and he runs an unbelievable program. But for him to to get on there and talk like that. And one more thing, Paul, I'll hang up. During the course of the season, when you have Clemson with a schedule like they play, I wonder how many of their ones and even twos, see the fourth quarter.
Not often.
And I say that only to say that you got their ones that have probably played half of the season so far, and pretty much fresh legged and uninjured. I know they probably got a couple guys banged up, but compared to a lot of teams, they're sitting pretty good.
Yeah, no, I think your point about the SEC, Gary, is a really, really good one. Rick in California is on the air. Hello, Rick.
Paul, thanks for taking my call. And let me answer the question of your last caller. Nobody's ever heard on Clemson. I said that in my last call. When do you ever hear of somebody on Clemson getting hurt? Because they don't play. They just don't have to play anybody. And the reason Dabo's upset is because they won their toughest game on the schedule, and nobody's giving them credit for it because their toughest game on the schedule is modern-day high school out here in Southern California. So, but listen, as far as the game, I wish you could go back and find my tapes because
Rick, I remember what you said.
Yeah, I said Jones would be a huge part of any championship run. The kicking game would kill Alabama. And after the Ole Miss game, the grease fire defense would end up costing Alabama as well. All 3 things happened. So it's a blessing in disguise. They didn't belong in the Final Four anyway. But I think Georgia could go on a run here. I think their defense is the best in the country. I can see them giving LSU all kinds of trouble. So I think a lot of people are sleeping on Kirby's team. I don't know what you think, but I mean, if somebody
I agree with you on the defense, but
State.
Where are they going to get offensive production?
They can't throw the ball downfield. I mean, when was the last time Fromm threw a ball over 30 yards? It's insane that he has so far gone backwards since his freshman year. I don't know what the hell's happened. But I mean, I know the receivers aren't as good as what he had.
Hey, listen, what's happened, Rick, is he doesn't have any receivers like he did.
I know, and that's the scary part. I'm rooting for Georgia. I hope they run the table, but Ohio State looks awfully, awfully good, man. I mean, that's the best team I've seen so far, and they have just blown out everybody they've played. So I don't know if you're going to put Utah in there or what, but I would not want to be Utah going into that game. And the last thing I'll ask you is, Alabama, if Oklahoma loses, do they match up Bama and Oklahoma?
Well, probably not, because I mean, the pecking order is interesting at the moment. So Georgia would very likely get the Sugar Bowl bid, and then there would be a conversation about Orange and Cotton, and these are just theories right now, Rick. But
team, right?
If you're the Orange Bowl, who do you want? Do you want Florida, which has come off a great season, or you want Alabama, which sputtered to the end, and the enthusiasm level and the amount of players that will be available is going to be pretty thin?
Yeah, I totally agree. I was just curious as to what your thoughts were. I mean,
apparently we lost Rick, but we appreciate his call. Let's check out Ben in Jacksonville. Hello, Ben.
How's it going, Paul? Paul?
Yeah, hey there. Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. I was just calling, asking about Tennessee's bowl projection. Everybody's kind of all over the board about it, and I was wondering what you thought. I'd really like to see them in the Gator Bowl playing Michigan. I live here. I already bought tickets, actually, to the Gator Bowl, so I was wondering what you thought about that.
Listen, I am not a bowl expert. I think Tennessee will get one of those really good bowls down in Florida, so I think that's a really good possibility. I think after Auburn and the usual suspects, Georgia, Alabama, I think Tennessee would be the most attractive team. I mean, you try to match up. Places where you'll get a fan base, and I mean, I've heard that obviously the Memphis Bowl wants Tennessee, but I think Tennessee can do better than that.
Yes, sir. I agree. Also, I wanted to talk about the Carolina Panthers just fired Ron Rivera, and I think Tom Coughlin down here in Jacksonville ought to be giving him a phone call real quick so we can get rid of Doug Marrone.
Yeah, let me say this. I've gotten to know Rivera a little bit, and I think Rivera will have the owner did him a favor. After Sunday's loss to the Redskins, their season was over. I mean, there was 5 games left, but nobody really was going to care. And now Ron Rivera will be sitting there with time on his hands and the ability to start surreptitiously meeting with various team owners, and whether it's the Bears, whether it's Jacksonville, whether it's the Browns. I mean, they're going to be. You and I both know there'll be 8 or 9 or 10. The Giants perhaps. Rivera will have his pick of 5 or 6 clubs. I mean, he's a really good coach.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seth Walder will join us from ESPN Analytics and tell us what's going to happen tonight. And does Alabama still have a chance to get in the playoffs? And always a staple of our Tuesday program, Seth Walder from ESPN Analytics, to give us somewhat of a preview of what is to come tonight. Seth, always great to have you on. So you caught a little bit of attention last week by saying Alabama could still get in with a loss. I guess that's over, right?
That's over. Paul, I assume you and I are both off that bandwagon, right?
Yeah, I think it's time to get off. So let's talk about the SEC championship game and the variables. I mean, there's only a couple outcomes that are possible, but go through the variables on what is going to happen Saturday afternoon in Atlanta.
Well, I think the interesting thing when I look at our numbers is how close we think that this game is going to be. I mean, most people see LSU, of course, as being the better team, but and we agree with that. But we will say that we just think that Georgia, their defense is so much better than LSU's that they can almost make up the gap that LSU, the advantage that LSU has on offense. I think the key number to know here is that LSU, though Joe Burrow ranks 3rd in total QBR, Georgia ranks 3rd in total QBR allowed. So ultimately, we give Georgia a 44% chance to win this game, which is pretty good. If Georgia wins, it's a really easy decision for the committee. Both Georgia and LSU will get in. If LSU wins, that's where it starts to get interesting.
Is there any chance that LSU wouldn't get in with a Georgia victory?
I don't think so. I think LSU is basically in either way, and just given what they've, how good they've looked this season and what they've accomplished, beating Alabama, and all their other wins, of course, too, LSU is probably safe either way. It's a little bit of an unprecedented situation. We haven't really had that conference championship loser, but I think it would be a good time to find out from the committee. I do think LSU would get in even if it lost.
And Seth, is the same thing applicable to the Big Ten championship game if Ohio State loses?
Yes, I think it is. Ohio State, just given what it's done, being undefeated to this point, if it were to lose to Wisconsin, it would be just fine to be losing to a two-loss team. So it's not like Wisconsin is really a threat to jump them, I don't think. And so, yeah, we feel quite confident that Ohio State still gets in, even with a loss.
Okay, so let's play the chalk, and these things occur, and Clemson somehow, some way, survives Virginia. Who is next?
That'll be tough.
What are we going to see from? I mean, what are we going to see in relation to Utah and Oklahoma?
This is going to be a really interesting question. I'll tell you how this looks in our numbers right now. We favor Oklahoma to get in, but obviously it could go either way. The reason we like Oklahoma, the reason the playoff predictor likes Oklahoma, is because they will have accomplished a little bit more in strength of record. They'll be a little bit better in FPI. Ultimately, it's saying they are slightly more deserving and slightly better than Utah. However, I will say this. Tonight, for the first time, what we're going to do is put the committee's rankings into the playoff predictor. That will probably raise up Utah's number a decent amount, I would guess, to make this basically a 50-50, I would think. That's my guess as to what the model is going to say after tonight. Given that, I think a lot will come down to what these teams do in their conference championship game, the way that they play. That could make the difference here, ultimately, when it comes down to it.
So let's look at a couple more variables. What if Baylor beats Oklahoma?
If Baylor beats Oklahoma, Utah's probably in, but I do want to just say that we don't rule out the possibility of Baylor jumping Utah, getting in. Obviously, that would be a really strong win for Baylor. They would have beaten Oklahoma. They would have avenged their only loss, and you could make a case. We still think Utah's more likely. Don't get me wrong about that. I just don't want to completely rule out that possibility.
Talking to Seth about the variables, Seth, I know there are a couple of things floating around. I'm sure you've considered them. I mean, if everyone loses, I mean, what are there other possibilities just go through it, that we start seeing just massive losses here? I guess Utah losing, Oklahoma losing, then what happens?
Here's the I was playing around last night looking at what's the most bizarre scenario we can get to, right? So I think it's if LSU wins and then you have 4 upsets in the other games. At that point, you're going to have LSU is going to be in, Ohio State's going to be in, and then you're probably looking at 3 spots between Clemson, who our model would say doesn't really deserve it based on how easy their schedule is, Baylor, and Wisconsin, believe it or not, would maybe get it back into the conversation. But I do want to stress how unlikely this is. We simulate the season 20,000 times. That only happened 23 of those 20,000 times. So we really can't put a probability on it. Ultimately, on what we would project in that situation, it's a very unlikely scenario. I think it would be, that would be a real chaotic one for the committee. That's for sure.
Yeah, I don't see it happening, but. Certainly fun to think about, isn't it?
Yes, I like thinking about that one.
Let's finally, before you go, let's talk about the FPI rankings. I'm not sure what it means at this point, but it is very interesting when you take a look at how it stacks up.
I think, so what I think you're getting at probably is Alabama being number 3 in our FPI rankings. This is something our old friend John Hayes brought up on Twitter, and I've been hearing about it from college football fans over the last few days. The reason that Alabama is number 3, there's 2 things. Number 1, FPI is forward-looking. It's not taking into account, or it's not saying exactly who did you beat and who did you lose. It's how good are you going forward. I think it's totally reasonable to say that at this point, without Tua, Alabama probably should slot behind LSU. But what I will say is this. I think that one really interesting thing at this moment is the committee at the top of their protocol, it says to identify the 4 best teams, right? And we know that they don't really do that, but this year is a perfect example. In both FPI and I asked Caesars for this, and in Vegas, there are at least 5 teams that are better than Utah and Oklahoma. In some order, that's Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia. So I do think that it is interesting when you think about it. I do think that it is reasonable to say Alabama is probably a better team than Utah at this point.
Okay, the obvious question, why would we put Utah or Oklahoma in the playoffs?
Well, if it were up to me, I wouldn't consider team strength at all ultimately when I'm picking the 4 playoff, because otherwise why are we going about playing these games? I mean, we should, I think, reward winning. And so I don't have an issue with Utah getting in the playoff over Alabama. I just wish we did it without this sort of like mirage of the 4 best teams. We don't need to do that. No one says that the World Series has to be the 2 best teams in baseball or the Super Bowl is the 2 best teams in the NFL. Teams have to win their way and earn their way into those spots. Well, college football should be the same way too. Let's just be honest about it.
But quickly, before you go, what's going to happen for number 1? What are the variables there?
Yeah, Ohio State, I assume, will stay there, but I do think that LSU ought to be number 1. They do deserve it. They're 1 and 2 in strength of record, but what they've done is quite different. In order for Ohio State, taking a look at this. In order for Ohio State to have the same resume that LSU does in terms of difficulty of being undefeated, it would have to add a neutral site win over Georgia and have LSU not play another game to even get on LSU's level. So to me, LSU deserves that number 1 seed. I just wouldn't expect to see it tonight.
Great stuff. Thank you very, very much. Good to have you on. We'll talk next week.
Thanks, Paul.
You got it. Great stuff. We'll take a break. More to come on this program, including your phone calls at 855-242-7285. Coach, have you ever seen anything like this one?
No. And Paul, it was 10 league changes. And the most points we had given up in a ball game this year, I think, was in the 20s. And we give up 45 points Saturday. And, the same thing probably true about Alabama, because we score 48 and you don't score. I think that's the most points that's ever been scored against Nick.
Yes, that is correct.
Alabama. And it was a crazy game, but a great football game. And, the ebb and flow of the game from one side to the other. And Alabama's got a good football team. And, it was just as a classic, and one that people will remember forever. And that it changes the dynamics at Alabama, but it also changes the dynamics at Auburn, because we want to go to a good bowl game, and we deserve to go to a good bowl game. All you have to do is look at our resume. And from a standpoint, now I know we lost 3 games, but that being said, we also beat some great football teams along the way, and it's an exciting football team and one that deserves to go to, like I said, to a major bowl. Right now, he's got our program in as good a shape as it could possibly be in. And if we can recruit around the quarterback we got a national championship caliber quarterback. And we're in good shape going forward as far as our football program is concerned. And Coach Malzahn is one running the show, and he deserves a lot more credit. But he's not the kind of guy that's going to go out and have a false face on and try to impress people and meet people and so on and so forth. He is what he is from a standpoint of personality, and he's not going to cater to all of the people that want to be catered to.
Welcome back. Now it's time for Fansville, brought to you by Dr. Pepper. Well, we got another LSU-Georgia meeting in the championship game, the second most frequent, I'm guessing, behind Alabama and Florida. Georgia, third different school to reach 3 straight SEC games. Joe Burrow, game starts at 4. And we'll be there on Friday. Joe is in Georgia. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Hey, yeah, I'm a Georgia fan. Really excited about this weekend. Driving over to Atlanta. I'm not a delusional Georgia fan like one of my Florida friends thinks I am. I think that Georgia has got a great chance to win this weekend because I believe that defense still does win championships. Which brings me to my question. This morning I was watching McElroy, and they were going through the different scenarios if Georgia were to win, and he had Georgia and Georgia and LSU at 2 and 3. So I guess my question is that what do you see that happening? Do you see Georgia playing LSU and then turning around and playing them again in the next game?
No, I don't. And whether they should or shouldn't, I really believe this committee will look at the Georgia loss to South Carolina and say, you know what, I know we've already gotten over that, but we're not going to get over it now.
Right. Hey,
now again, a confluence of events could help them, but I mean, it would take a lot of people. I mean, I think Clemson would have to lose for that to be possible.
Right. Hey, last question, switching gears on FSU. Why is that not one of the greatest jobs to take right now? I have zero respect for the ACC. Like most folks calling in to talk about their scheduling and stuff, but it just seems like the greatest place for a coach.
It really should be a good job. I think it's just gotten stale and it's like a beautiful house that hasn't been kept up. And I mean, I think right now, to me, reading the tea leaves, it looks like they've tried to bring in a big time coach. I know they've gone after several major coaches, big names. I don't think they've been able to get anyone. So I think Mike Norvell is their backup choice after they run out of major names. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, I think Jimbo stayed too long. Taggart just never quite fit in, got off to a miserable start, and I think the program's in moderate shape. I don't think it's in a disastrous situation.
Well, it's just a great recruiting, state of Florida. And you think about the last time the ACC championship really meant anything. The last time the ACC really had 2 great schools, either FSU or Clemson, and obviously Florida State does play Florida, so they got that going for them. But anyway, I'll let you go, Paul. Go Dogs. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you very much. Really nice of you to call. Let's continue and check in with Ruth, who is in Tennessee. Hey, Ruth.
Hi. I've got a question. What do you think about Butch Jones being at Alabama? He didn't do anything extra good for Tennessee, and I was wondering if they might want to move him away from Mr. Saban, because I think he might be jinxing them.
Well, I mean, listen.
What do you think? And have you had any other calls that he might not be doing anything good for Alabama?
Thank you, Ruth. First of all, since Butch Jones arrived at Alabama, Alabama has lost 3 games. Butch Jones is an analyst. He's not playing a major role in the operation, and even if he were, it wouldn't make a bit of difference. I think Butch is a good coach. Surprised his name has not been mentioned for more head coaching jobs. Great to have you on. Thank you very much. And Dennis is in South Carolina. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Paul. How you doing today, sir?
We're doing great. Thank you.
Outstanding. Love the show. Listen to it every day or view it. Check it out on TV when I can. You surely know how to stir the pot, sir. You and Stephen A., when y'all get together, to be sure. You know how to stir that pot good.
I like to eat.
I did have a comment for your listeners, also for you, too, for all your listeners. Statement here. Clemson would win the SEC East annually every year if it was in it. I don't think it'd be much of a problem running through Georgia or Florida every year. And I did have a question for you, Mr. Finebaum. Did you know Clemson is 11 out of its last 12 versus SEC opponents, including the monumental 44-16 beatdown it bestowed upon Bama last year?
Yeah, you know, I do know that, and you know why I know that?
I'm glad you know a few things, Paul. It's been good listening to you.
The reason I know that is every time a Clemson fan calls in, they feel they must say that. Listen, I am positive that we have as many Clemson fans watching and listening as almost any other fan base because they can't get enough of this. They can't get enough of all the attention that they get here because they don't really get any attention in the ACC because there's no interest in Clemson in the ACC because it's such a weak league. But thanks for watching, Clemson fans. I'm all in.
Paul Finebaum is great. Paul Finebaum is great. Paul Finebaum is great.
Man, oh man, do we have a lot to talk about. We're only here for 4 hours. We may need to extend that just a little bit.
Dabo will never stop complaining.
That's
low-hanging fruit of truth.
I mean, Dabo is somebody just needs to give Dabo a pacifier and send him to timeout until the end of the college football season. I'm really getting sick of his whining.
That's what he said.
Well, Muschamp said it. And by the way, I want to thank my administration for so screwing up all the statements about my future that I'm able to slip in here for at least another year until the buyout goes down.
Yeah, it just seems like poor journalism all around, not, double checking.
Hannah, I mean, I know you're fairly new out of college, but poor journalism all around is the standard these days.
Yeah.
What do you do, Paul, for a situation like this then?
Why does Auburn always seem like they screw it up?
Because they love Auburn so much, they think they know what's best for Auburn.
It's not over, and Saban is not out.
But have we not owned the championship?
Well, we're not using past tense here to keep. We're talking about present and future, not past.
I think I would love for Lane to come. We're pretty good friends, and he knows the SEC, better being under Saban and, at Tennessee. And I just think he'd be a great fit. It was, my pick for him, and I was kind of hoping Rex Ryan might have had a chance too.
He is a good guy. I know Rex. Rex would be really. Maybe Rex will come as a coordinator.
And you go out there and you play back and forth, you play back and forth, you play back and forth. When the zeros are on the damn clock, guess what that means? Game over. 48-45. 48 points. 48 points. That's damn near half 100. I caught the man out of his RV. I said, "Mister, why am I got to eat these moon pies?" He said, "Because we're going to score so many points on you Gamecocks, your rear end is going to go into an eclipse."
Welcome back. Glad you're here, and a lot to do in this hour. Hope to talk to Joe Burrow's dad, Jimmy, to find out how his son became the talk of college football. That is coming up. We'll also head to Arkansas and see what's up with the Lane Train rumors. How about now we head out to the Northwest. Lee is in Seattle. Hey, Lee.
Hey, Paul. Insecure bunch over at Clemson. That always been the case, or just recently?
No, you're right.
I loved the Stephen A. Smith interview. It was great. It's nice to see that side of him because
he's amazing.
They don't. Yeah. Couple of questions about Alabama. I just wanted to tell you really quickly. I tried to get a hold of you last Wednesday before Thanksgiving to wish you and your wife happy Thanksgiving, and to thank you for making a very unexpected, unforced retirement a little bit more tolerable, and college football, fun to watch again. So a little bit.
Well, I'm really well. First of all, I wish you well in what you do next, but I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, absolutely. You certainly have done that. Couple questions. Saban wouldn't be where he is unless you were, brilliant at what he does. But has he ever explained, or he's got to know that the inconsistency and the change every year with all of his assistant coaches can't be good for his team. Has he ever explained anything about that?
Explain why there's so much turnover. Is that right, Lee?
Well, yeah. Because it's just doesn't seem that the consistency is there. It would be nice, I would think, for the players any recruiting, but he doesn't seem to care. And I'm just wondering if he's ever mentioned that because I haven't heard it.
Well, listen, you have to look at some of the factors. Kirby Smart was at Alabama for more than 10 years. So, there was a lot of consistency there. The offense has always been a little bit helter-skelter. But, sometimes there's not much you can do when a coach, he had Lane Kiffin, he got a coaching job. He replaced him with Steve Sarkisian. Sarkisian left a couple weeks later. Now he's back. You can only control certain things. Now, do I think Saban is an easy person to work for? No, I don't. But that's also part of the charm of Nick Saban is that you go there knowing you are going to encounter a difficult ordeal. You hope to survive it, but you know that if you do, you will very likely get a great resume attribute, and you'll also have a great experience that should help you.
Okay, so have the last couple years at the end of the season been a little more different then? Because it seems like he got rid of a lot of his staff last year, and
he got rid of some of them. Some of them just walked out. Elko, I think it was Elko, the offensive coach, just said, "You know what? I don't want to be here anymore. I'm going to Miami." How'd that work out? So there's always going to be attrition, and part of it is he's a difficult person. Dabo Swinney's had most of his staff intact now for a number of years. He's made a few changes, but his defensive coordinator, which may have been the most important coach he ever hired, has been there for the entire run of this. The two offensive coordinators have been there. It's a family atmosphere. Alabama it's like a pro team. You win or you get or you get lost.
Right. Okay. Do you think he is, when he finally does retire, do you think he's going to go out with a winning season or a losing season? Because his personality would seem like
I don't see him going. Excuse me, Dan Enos was the person's name, not Elko. I apologize. My brain is fried. I don't ever think Nick Saban is going to have a losing record. But what is considered a subpar season for Nick Saban?
Well,
10-2 is considered subpar. If Nick Saban doesn't compete or play for the national championship or win the national championship, it seems like a failure. Now it may change. We've gone through playing for the national championship 5 straight years in the playoffs, 4 of those for the title. This year it's going to be really weird. So,
right.
is Saban going to say all the same things, Lee, that he said last year that, quite frankly, didn't come true? I know fans want to say, well, if this hadn't happened or that hadn't happened. Everyone has injuries, Lee. Everyone in the college football goes through that.
Yeah, absolutely. You said that it happens with a lot of teams I know, but that, whatever bowl they play in, they probably won't show up. And that just feels kind of like bad sportsmanship to me. I don't know. I don't know if it does to anybody else.
Well, listen, it's not bad sportsmanship, Lee. It's the current state of college football with the transfer portal, with players saying, you know what, if I'm about to make a couple of $1 million or many, many millions of dollars, why am I going to get hurt playing in a game that frankly nobody cares about? And this is not the old days when bowl games were a reward and you cherished them. Bowl games are now just another exercise for the schools and the networks to make money. The players don't get very much out of it, and I'm on the side of the players. If I'm a number 1 draft choice or a top or first round pick, and you're telling me I'm going to play Memphis in the Cotton Bowl, I'm saying thanks, but no thanks.
I completely agree, and have for a while. I got the impression though that Nick Saban just isn't going to be very happy about showing up. That's, I guess, where.
But you know what, Lee? I mean, Nick. If you, I mean, you don't want Nick Saban trashing you, but Nick Saban was a pro coach. He understands what bowl games are all about, and it's just the reality of.
My leg's still bothering me.
Hey, Cap. You know what? I did not understand that, but I kind of understood the dialect. John is in Kentucky. Hey, John.
Hello, Paul. How are you?
I am well. Thank you. Thank you for the call.
Well, thank you for taking my call. I'm a first-time caller, and I've just got a couple of things I'd like to lay out for you, and then you can give me your comments on. One is the situation with Kentucky football. I think it looks like it may have made a turn where we're going to be competitive each year. And do you think Stoops will hang on with us? And the last one is with the coach, Nick Saban. You know, I'd love to have Nick Saban at Kentucky, and this flack that he's getting is, to me, unjust, and I think he's one of the best coaches that's ever been in college football. And what's your comment on that? Thank you, sir.
Well, John, thank you. Well, first of all, he's not leaving Alabama to go to Kentucky or anywhere else in college football. He's not getting any flack at all. We're having an honest, objective, at least I am, conversation about Nick Saban. And we had it today here at ESPN. And I don't know what's being said in local markets because I'm sitting here in Lower Manhattan right now on the East River with the Statue of Liberty out my window. I think it's a fair conversation, and no one's running him off. No one's being unkind. We're just talking about the reality of the situation. That's what happens when you are the greatest of all time and you don't win. People are going to converse. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback in the NFL. He had a couple of bad games. People are wondering, is this it for Tom Brady? That's what happens when you have shows like the ones that ESPN has every morning. There's a lot of time and very few really good topics, and it just so happens for Nick Saban, he's a big topic. Listen, Chris Peterson retired yesterday. He's a great coach, one of the best coaches in college football. I did a bunch of interviews today. I don't think it ever came up. Why? Because he never won a national championship, came close. His retirement really didn't send ripples throughout college football. It's sad, and you appreciate what he's done, but he isn't Nick Saban. We will continue with more phone calls. And Corey is up next. Hey, Corey.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for taking my phone call.
Thank you.
So I called a couple months ago and asked you, you thought that Dan Mullen would have the program at an elite level sooner than later, and you kind of said that in the next year or two that he really should. And I was wondering, given the way the Gators played this year, especially the way we finished, do you think we'll be at that elite level come next season? And do you think the expectation will be an SEC championship next year?
Listen, it's always difficult to predict a championship, but I think this program is already very, very close to an elite level. When I looked at the schedule before the season, I didn't see how Florida could win 10 games. A couple of reasons why. I thought the Missouri game would be extremely difficult. I didn't realize Missouri was going to capsize. I thought there would be a couple of other really tough games, and Florida just managed the schedule very well. I thought they might lose at Kentucky. They nearly did. But Florida made all the right moves. They survived Kentucky and Miami, which turned out to be a terrible team. And they survived Felipe Franks going down, and I think Dan Mullen did one of the best coaching jobs I've ever seen.
Thanks, Paul. And do you think one more thing? Do you think that, because I've heard you mention a couple times that if the playoff was expanded to say 8 games, that we would be a very dangerous team in the playoffs. Do you think that because their only 2 losses were to Georgia and LSU, that because of that, and also with Auburn too. I mean, Auburn is obviously a great team. They have 3 losses, but 3 losses to very good teams. Do you think teams like us and Auburn give a good argument as to why the playoff should be expanded?
Absolutely. Listen, I think Auburn and Florida are in some ways similar teams. I think they're both hot. They both could make noise, at least in the first half of the playoff. And listen, Florida played Georgia really well, played LSU extraordinarily well. That was like a heavyweight fight until the end. So I have no doubt Florida could play with anyone in the country, and we know Auburn can. Thank you for the call. We're up against a break. More to come. We'll talk to the father of the Heisman Trophy favorite. We'll also go to Arkansas a little bit later on. Stephen A. Smith started our program off, and man, I hope you had a chance to either see it or get a chance to see it somehow a little bit later on. It was a classic 10 or 15 minutes right here.
Started over the weekend. There were rumblings, as there always are, and it seemed as if the court of public opinion had turned against Matt Luke after the Egg Bowl and how hard the loss was for some Ole Miss fans with the circumstances of the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty and the missed PAT. And then Keith Carter, the athletic director, pretty much came out and said today that he felt as if the ceiling was met and there was too much fan apathy, and that even if Matt Luke started to turn it around and had 6 or 7 wins next year, he doesn't think that this program would generate the sort of excitement that he needs to run a successful program. So when that happens and when the win-loss record gets worse from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, you start to consider a coaching change. So
Didn't he, hold on a second. Didn't that guy you just quoted say last week that everything was going well?
Yeah, about 10 days ago, he said that Matt Luke was who they were going to be progressing forward with. So obviously something changed, and I asked him today directly what changed, and he pretty much said that it was a sense of he thought more about it and he changed his mind, which people are always entitled to change their mind, but really the only thing that's changed in the last 10 days is Ole Miss lost by 1 point because they missed an extra point that would have sent the game to overtime. There's no telling what would have happened if that game went to overtime or if Ole Miss had made any number of mistakes that they made disappear. But yeah, 10 days ago, Matt Luke was secure in his job, and now he is a free agent on the market. Keith came out and said directly that he has not taken any money from boosters for the buyout. So all the people who want to come in and say this was a money issue, it may have been, but the athletic department is maintaining that was not the case. What really happened is I think that fans have really, really not wanted Matt Luke to be here, and they've spoken with, not going to games and not sending in donations and all of that stuff. And what I hear as apathy is that Keith comes from a fundraising background. Ole Miss is at a point where it needs to generate some revenue, it needs to generate some excitement, and I don't think the Matt Luke era, no matter how quickly and how positive it looked that things were going to turn around, that wasn't generating the type of excitement the athletic department wants.
Welcome back. We are glad you're here on a Tuesday afternoon. Let's continue with Mark, who is up next in Florida. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Paul. How are you doing, man?
We're doing great. Thank you.
Good, sir. Good. Hope you had a good holiday.
It was fantastic.
And, I didn't get a chance to offer my condolences to the Sullivans. And really, the Auburn community has always been a real class act, and we're proud to have them in the league with us. But it's just a shame that, around the holidays, you have to, celebrate these sort of things and move on.
Thank you for saying that.
Our boy out there in the ACC who's so proud of the 9-1 record that Clemson has had, it's been accomplished, without being in the league. They haven't had to play 8 or 9 games a year in the league. And if he thinks he would just tap dance through the SEC East, he's wrong, because they'd have to get it up every week and not be playing the Sisters of the Poor and Virginia and God knows who else, Wake Forest, North Carolina. Oh, boy. I think that because they have been successful here and there, like a shotgun wedding, it's just, only good for effect. But you have to get in there and play every week. It's a different story.
Yeah, I think your point is great, Mark. If you play in a bowl game, if you play in an early September game, it's one thing. But try doing what Auburn did. Play Georgia, play Alabama over a 2 or 3 week period.
Exactly.
Georgia finished the season with Auburn and Texas A&M. This is where it gets extremely difficult. A&M had to go to Georgia and LSU on back-to-back weekends. Could Clemson? Just think about this for a second. Could Clemson have gone to Athens and Baton Rouge back-to-back and won both games? I'm here to tell you they wouldn't have won either game.
Yeah, and they wouldn't have done well early in the season when that kid was having such a tough time, and they were barely they beat North Carolina.
They barely beat North Carolina. They had to stop a 2-point conversion. So I don't really want to hear that.
Exactly. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Nice of you to call. Really do appreciate it. Let's talk to Philip, who is in Knoxville.
How you doing, Paul?
Hey, Philip. Good evening.
I hope you're feeling better.
I am. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you a couple questions. What do you think about them Volunteers coming from where they started to 7 games they've won, and what bowl do you think they're going to go to? And we owe it to them wide receivers that we had, Palmer, Jennings, and Callaway. They're going to be missed this year, but most of all, they have the things where they give out trophies, and I think they ought to give the Heisman Commentator Award because you deserve it for what you have to put up with on your show with all these people. And one last comment the guy made about Clemson, Dabo Sweeney saying they don't play nobody, and the guy over there said that they ought to play in the SEC. They would win every game. Well, we invite him in, but I believe it would be a different story on what he says. But I'll hang up and listen to your comments. Paul, I hope you get to feeling better.
Thank you very, very much. Great to have you on. Cat Daddy is up next.
Mr. Finebaum, you have got to stop talking about Dabo Sweeney. He is playing ESPN media like a fine violin. He's got y'all saying just what he wants to say to get his players on jack.
So I guess you heard what Dabo said today, huh?
I heard what he said, but he's doing that. He's baiting you. That's how Dabo is.
I thought he was pretty kind, really. He talked about how good I was at my job. It's more than I get from coaches in the SEC.
Well, you are good at your job. Dabo, I was right about that. You get paid to do what you do, and you do a good job at it. But y'all got to hush up by Clemson and tell them that they couldn't beat them in there if they come to the SEC, because y'all just fired them boys up, making them mad, and they feel like they're against the world again. And I don't want to see them winning no national championship for the 3rd time.
Well, you better get prepared.
Well, Mr. Finebaum, that climate change is going to kill us in 8 years. We ain't got but 8 years left to beat that gum Clemson.
How's everything going with Coach Muschamp?
He fired a bunch of his folks around him, letting them loose, and people down here at the liquor store, they just shaking their head watching the boy down there at Ole Miss get gone, and Missouri lets their coach go, and we keep eyes. People around here just don't know what to think. They in what I would call a funk.
Well, listen, you've always heard the saying, it's always darkest right before dawn.
Yeah, that's what my mama said before I was born.
Yeah, she was right. Cat Daddy, thank you. We'll talk to the father of Joe Burrow.
good to have a press conference today. What a great night, Tiger Stadium. I want to thank all the fans from the Tiger Walk all the way to the end of the stadium. What a great night for our 15 seniors. They did a tremendous job of sending them off the right way. I said this before, I do believe our fans were the difference in our season this year. Getting to play Florida at home, getting to play Auburn at home, those guys were the difference in some tight ball games, and I really, really appreciate our fans in Tiger Stadium on Saturday night. Defense had our best night, 6 sacks, 169 total yards, 2 for 13 on third down, and forced them to punt on the first 7 possessions. We wanted to start fast. I told Coach Arena this morning, I thought it was his best job all year. Our defensive coaches, our players, we're an attacking scheme. I thought our DBs contested all the routes, especially against some wide receivers that would give us a tough time next year. Very proud of our defensive staff and all our players. On offense, just got to mention these things. I usually don't, but I think it's time to mention them, give our guys credit where credit's due. LSU record for points in the season, 584. Scored 50 points, a record 6 times. 40 or more points 10 times, school record. Joe said the SEC passing record, tied for passing TDs. Joe has the it factor. He has it. You know, he walks on the field, he has it. He wants the ball in his hand, he wants to make the play. I think that's a combination of smarts, it's a combination of grits, it's a combination of being prepared and being an excellent athlete. I mean, that guys can move with his feet, and we don't even use him half as much as we can running the football. I think that all those combined, and Joe's very confident. He's very smart. He knows the offense. He calls the protections. He's smart enough he can call the plays. He has a great relationship with his receivers. They can break routes. They can break plays. So all those things combined gives him. It's like playing in the backyard to him. Just like when we used to play like backyard to the kids. He has confidence that he can make a play.
Ed, are you confident that no matter what happens Saturday, that you are in the playoff?
No. I ain't thinking about it. We're not buying into that at all. We got to win. I don't know if we got to win to get in the playoffs or not. That's not. I'm not even talking about that. Our goal is to beat Georgia and win the SEC, and then let's see what happens. So that's not coming into play. We're not talking about that, and we're not even considering it right now.
We are just so excited to talk to our next guest, Jimmy Burrow, the father of Joe, a legendary defensive coach at many, many schools, and last one at Ohio U, and just a fascinating part of the Joe Burrow story. Coach Burrow, thank you so much for being a part of the program. Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon to you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we are delighted, and first of all, congratulations. I know that you dreamed one day of seeing your son compete and be well and do whatever he is capable of doing. But in your wildest dreams, did you ever expect this?
No, I did dream of him playing great football at the college level, but if I said I dreamed all these other things happening, that would be a lie. But unbelievable, just the whole thing that LSU, the team, and Joe this year. I mean, I told somebody, I mean, you could write a fiction book about it and make all that up, but even then, probably somebody wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, as you may or may not know, ESPN is owned by Disney, but I know some people out in Burbank that might want to do this story. It is fairly unbelievable.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different parts of it too that seem to interest a lot of people, and I can see why. It's just a strange trip from Joe in Ohio to LSU, and I could see where it might make a pretty decent movie down the road.
Well, Coach Burrow, I'm really interested because we know about recently, but I'd like to go back a little bit. I mean, you were a longtime coach, and your son, like a lot of coaches' sons, grow up, and often they follow their dad into football. At what point did you, as a very learned person of football, see the talent in young Joey Burrow?
Well, it first started with really baseball and basketball, and I could see that he was a good athlete, and then his body type for a good while growing up seemed to lend more to him playing basketball, and he was a All-State basketball player, but he started being a quarterback at third grade. By the sixth and seventh grade, they were spreading people out. They had two of his best friends were twins that are now starting tight ends at Ohio University. So he would throw the ball downfield, and I got to see a couple of games, and I would see the fourth, fifth, sixth grade, whatever, throwing the ball downfield. And my recollection of watching games of that age group usually was you put the biggest, fastest guy at tailback, and you hand the ball to him basically every down. They were throwing the ball all over the place, and then by the time he got to sophomore, we were going to 707 camps with the high school team and just running up. I mean, basically scoring like they did at LSU. And I thought it looked like there was something special going on out there, and with Joe and really the rest of the team. I said, asked some people, was that normal? And they said, no, there's never been anything like what we're seeing in the 7-on-7. So it was a progression, but fairly early he was throwing the ball downfield and scrambling around at times and doing things that he does now, but just at the little league level.
What was the recruiting like, you being a coach and obviously knowing all these coaches who were recruiting him?
Well, that was a process in itself. We were isolated here in Athens, Southeast Ohio, but being at Ohio University and all the connections, people started calling fairly early in the process. I mean, we took a lot of unofficial visits around the area, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Michigan State, Indiana, places like that. And so, by the time his junior year rolled around, and we were getting calls from basically all over the country. People were coming in to watch him throw. We set up 2 days a week, after his junior year, so that he wouldn't have to throw every day. People would come in, and so he had always, you probably seen some of the story. We always wanted him to go to Nebraska, and he always wanted to go to Nebraska, and but we figured out that probably wasn't going to happen, and then one week Tennessee flew into the little airport here and watched Joe throw. Alabama flew in, and they were supposed to let us know something the next week, and then Coach Meyer called on, I think, the Monday of the following week, and it didn't take Joe had to let us know, and so he told Coach Meyer he had to call us, and then eventually Coach Meyer called me, and he said it took 8 minutes for him to commit. Is there something wrong or something? And I said, no, he just wanted to let his parents know before it hit the media that he was going to commit. But it was actually a fun process, probably more. That was a little more relaxing than say the transfer process, because he was making one of the more important decisions that he was ever going to make at that point.
Listen, I mean, we see it all the time, competing for jobs in various situations. I mean, he was competing with some very elite quarterbacks. As a coach, when you watch this unfold, I mean, you're in a unique position, but you're also a dad. What was that like?
Well, I always say that when you're watching your son at whatever sport, you do look at it through dad goggles, and so it's clouded somewhat. And but I always thought, he was the best quarterback out there, even at Ohio State. But I was also realistic enough to know that I wasn't in there breaking down the film every day and grading the quarterbacks and seeing all the details that go into being a quarterback at say Ohio State. So I just knew that he was competing at a very high level. I mean, Coach Meyer kept us posted on his progress. I can remember early when we had a meeting to kind of go over Joe's progress. He told Joe that he expected him at some point to play at a Heisman Trophy level in order to be the quarterback at Ohio State. And it in a roundabout way, he's doing that now. But I think Joe took that to heart that day too, and he knew that what was expected out of him, but there was frustration too that he wasn't, getting a chance to play. I mean, one of his best friends is J.T. Barrett, so never did Joe really think, hey, I should be out there and not J.T. J.T. had done such an awesome job being the quarterback at Ohio State, but then when J.T. left, and in Joe's mind, that was he was playing at a level that hopefully he would have been the guy, but it just he broke his hand and set him back some, and the rest is pretty much history.
So I mean, listen, it has been discussed a lot, but I am interested in when it finally came down to it, how clear cut was LSU?
Well, it really wasn't. As a matter of fact, when we went to LSU, we thought Cincinnati was in the lead. We thought he was certainly, that might be where he was going. He knew Luke Fickell, Joker Phillips was there, Mike Hartline, all guys that had been either on the staff as an analyst or GA or coach at Ohio State. I knew other people there on the staff. It was a real comfortable situation for him, 2.5 hours from Athens. Even when we were coming back from LSU, I thought that there had to be some ground made up somehow for Joe to choose LSU. But the more he thought about it, the more he came to grips with, hey, I want to play football at the highest level. I want to have a chance to play in championship games like he is Saturday, and that was the determining factor. But it was never really clear cut to us until he told us eventually that he wanted to go to LSU. He actually, so we kept in touch quite a bit. A lot of people were pulling at him in different directions. Even other schools continued to call, and he said, "Hey, I need 48 hours or so, Dad, to really sort through this, and I don't want any calls." And I said, "Okay, well, your mom and I'll keep giving you a call, and you'll let us know." And he said, "No, that means you and Mom too. No calls from you." So I knew at that point he was struggling with it, but needed time to himself, and basically he came to that decision on his own that, hey, LSU is the best place for him.
Coach, I know there have been many, many incredible moments, and there will likely be a few more in the coming days and weeks. But what was Saturday night at Tiger Stadium like when all eyes were on your son, and just one of the more poignant farewells I've ever seen to a home crowd?
Yeah, I mean it's unbelievable. I'd coached in some of the biggest stadiums around, played in some of the biggest stadiums around, but to stand there with Joe as his dad and his mom there, and basically our whole family, and over 100,000 people are cheering like they were for Joe. I mean, he's just the happiest person, the most proud dad and mom that can be. I've seen pictures in the last couple of days of me, and I mean that says it all. The big smile I have on my face, and it's something that you'll remember forever. And just that whole night. I mean, we thought we'd be probably a little more even emotional than we were, but just the whole scene was shocking. I think we were probably still in shock, so we didn't shed a lot of tears, but it was a great night.
Well, there are many more to come. Coach, congratulations to you and your entire family. We got a chance to spend some time with Joe at the media days, and I mean, we were just blown away by everything about him, and can't wait to hopefully see you this weekend and as LSU continues its run. All the best, Coach. Thank you very, very much for coming on.
And thanks for having me on, guys. Have a good night.
You bet. Coach Jimmy Burrow, the dad of Joe, a pretty outstanding player and coach in his own right, and what a proud dad seeing and enjoying his son's success. We will take a break. More of your phone calls.
I don't want to go into a game thinking, not every drive is going to end in a score. I think we get disappointed if we don't score. So I think going into this game, we're going to keep our same mentality. We're going to attack. We're going to go fast. We're going to throw the ball down the field, but also understanding that this is one of the best defenses in the country. So you're going to have to take what the defense gives you and march the ball down the field. They're not going to give you anything easy. I don't know about that. We obviously lost to Florida the week before, and we desperately needed a win. So I think we were kind of digging our heels in the ground in that game. I think during the season it's hard to reflect on whether it's I think it's hard to pick a point. This was when we decided we were going to be back. I think it was the culmination of everything last year that happened, the games we lost and the games we won, and then the hard work this offseason that we've put in. Honestly, I haven't really thought about it. I'm sure, just like everyone, Coach O thinks about it probably, just like I think about beating teams that didn't recruit me or counted me out. But, we're 12-0. We're sitting on top of the world right now, and, we're going to try to go 13-0 this week. I think it's hard to – I think if you get too caught up in that, you risk, sitting on your laurels and losing a game. So I think we're just ready to get to Saturday. Yeah, Texas A&M's not a bad team at all. They took Clemson 4 quarters, took Georgia and Alabama and Auburn 4 quarters. So that was a real complete game from us, apart from 2 or 3 series in the second half where they were able to get after us up front and stop us on offense. Our defense gave up 170 yards. That's unheard of, and that's back to what we expect from our defense. I think they're going to carry it over to Saturday. I had 2 different teams. They have 3 or 4 guys back on that defense, and the rest are new starters that are playing really, really well. And we're a new offense, same guys, but new offense and new scheme. So last year is last year. I'm sure they're going to want some revenge on us, but it's the SEC championship. I don't think you need any more motivation.
We are back, and we're live in New York on this Tuesday night. Jeff is up next in Columbus, Ohio.
What's going on, Paul Finebaum?
Jeff, we are doing fantastic. How are you?
Man, what an incredible interview with Mr. Burrow there. You can just tell why people even up here in Ohio still have a great admiration for Joe and his family.
No doubt. Really thought that was great.
Yeah, class act. You can just tell the whole family seems like a class act, and no wonder he handles everything with the maturity he has. Hey, Paul, I got to give you credit, man. That Antoine guy up in Michigan, I think they got the body bag out, the crime scene tape, and the spray paint. You just beat that guy down to a pulp.
I don't know how you deal with those Michigan fans, Jeff.
Hey, I tell you what, I've been telling you, Paul, they're as delusional as Tennessee and South Carolina fans. You know what it's like dealing with those guys down there. We got to deal with these. Hey, Antoine, if you're still listening, I got something to tell you. The most recent victory you've had over Ohio State is when Luke Fickell was the interim coach. 1 year later, Urban Meyer steps in, and in his first year, because he's an elite coach, he went undefeated and beat your Michigan Wolverines, and we haven't lost since. The blame up there needs to go to the athletic director who made these hires before Harbaugh and ran that program into the ground, while down here we were hiring Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, and now Ryan Day. There's the difference. Don't you agree, Paul?
I do agree. And listen, Harbaugh did not inherit a great situation. I think 5 years in, he ought to have his own program, but maybe even Jim.
He's the lead coach. He should do it in 2 or 3 years. There's no question in my mind. Jim Harbaugh, Jimbo Fisher, and Muschamp are the three most disappointing overpaid coaches in the country. And all of them better get their act together quick or they're going to be gone. Don't you agree?
Well, I do, because there's no patience anymore. I was talking to a coach the other day about a job, and I said, the expectations are so low. He said, it doesn't matter. If you don't win in 2 or 3 years, you're going to get fired no matter where you go. And my case in point is Chad Morris at Arkansas.
Right. I mean, I get why it's a tough call for Michigan, being Harbaugh's their boy, quarterback and all that. But I tell you what, they got to have, and the other thing is just the way he treats people. You know what I mean? Between the media and the media ought to be coming down on him hard. If they're not, they're just, they're scared of him, and I don't get it. But, hey, I tell you what, I got to admit, that Iron Bowl was unbelievable. I mean, I know Bama fans aren't into moral victories, but tell you what they do, lose 2 games by 6 points, and 2 incredible games. I mean, that Iron Bowl, right after the Ohio State-Michigan game, we had people over, and everybody was locked in to that Iron Bowl just as we were locked in, because it was an exciting game, and it's just amazing the different plays that happened in that ball game. But I tell you what, Paul, there's no doubt you got a sense of the pulse down there in the SEC, but I got to give you a little bit of grief tonight. You had 2 big misses this year, and you know what they are. Michigan to the college football playoff, and Urban Meyer would be a stiff on Fox pregame show. What do you think now, those 2 predictions?
Well, let me say this. I mean, listen, you make predictions and you're right or wrong. I am amazed how good Urban Meyer has been. I've only seen him a couple of times because I'm on the air at the same time, but I've watched the Friday night show and I've seen a clip of a couple of other shows. He's carrying that show, and that show right now, well, you know what it's doing. It's creating enormous buzz, which is not easy to do when you consider the competition.
No doubt about it. And like I told you a few weeks ago, I think what people like is it's all football talk. You know what I mean? And Urban is carrying that show because he's breaking it down, and it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's
hey, Jeff, you don't hear me. You don't hear me. You don't hear me pass out compliments very often, but I do speak the truth, and I think Urban Meyer is phenomenal on that show.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I knew he'd be good, and that's why I told you that, because when I saw him and Saban together at that national championship game, I forget what year, but you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, I remember.
When they were on the pregame, they were phenomenal together.
I think it was 2010. It was 2010.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember the exact year. All I remember is how good they were together. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because I still don't understand why people jumped on the Michigan bandwagon the first of the year. I don't see what they got, what they had coming back that was worth jumping on their bandwagon. And there they are, back in 3rd place in the east side of the division.
Well, the main reason, Jeff, the main reason was a new coach and the game in Ann Arbor, and neither one of them worked out to Jim's advantage. We have an hour to go. We hope you'll stick around. John has joined us for a moment to give his opinion, a big Arkansas fan. Of course, he played golf there. John, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you bet, Paul. How you doing?
I am doing great, and I miss seeing you and talking to you, but there's nothing better than to talk to you about Razorback football. And so tell us what you hear and what you think ought to happen.
Well, I mean, I'm hoping. I mean, I think I would love for Lane to come. We're pretty good friends, and he knows the SEC, better being under Saban and, at Tennessee. And I just think he'd be a great fit. It was, my picks were him, and I was kind of hoping Rex Ryan might have had a chance too.
He is a good guy. I know Rex. Rex would be really – maybe Rex will come as a coordinator.
Well, he said he'd bring his brother, but, I don't know. Those are my 2 favorite picks, but Lane would just he would change it probably quicker than most coaches would, and, we got to get the passion back at Arkansas. And
well, John, let me ask you this, because we had a guest on earlier that wondered whether Lane would take the job if offered. You seem to know more than all of us. What do you think?
He's not telling me much. I've just been bugging him for the last 3 or 4 days. Please come to Arkansas. But he's not saying too much about it, but he never said no, and he hasn't said yes. But, I think he's the one that I think can turn our program around, but I feel like it's going to take 3 years. It's just sad to see Arkansas football this way. And I love Chad Morris, and I love Coach Bielema, and it's a shame they couldn't get it done. But, I think Lane can, and we just got to give him time if he does come.
No, John, listen, we always enjoy talking to you, and I think you're saying what you've said publicly makes a big impact. Have you expressed your thoughts to the people that matter at Arkansas?
Oh, yeah, me and Hunter. I've texted Hunter. I gave him Lane's number.
I
he didn't ask for anything. I gave him Rex Ryan and Lane's number, and I said these are the two guys that, my personal opinion, would be someone that could change the program. But it just be. I think he was the right guy for the job, and whether he takes it or not, I just want him to know, and he already knows that I'd love for him to come to the Hill.
He's the program director at 92.1 The Ticket, our proud home in Northwest Arkansas, and the #1 sports show out there, and clearly has his pulse on Razorback sports. JB, great to have you on again. It's always a pleasure. So help us understand what's going on with this coaching search. What's up?
Well, it's great to talk to you, Paul, and I wish I could just answer whatever questions you have right now. I think a lot up in the air, but exciting times here. I think we're getting close to something.
The hot name, at least on social media, has been Lane Kiffin. Your view on that name?
Look, I think it's a name that continues to get a lot of momentum around here. Lane Kiffin's history as well as anybody. He's somebody who got a chance to be a big-time coach at a really young age. His father was a coach. He was groomed to be a coach. And when he got to be the Oakland Raiders head coach at 32, I think at the time, 12 years ago, a lot of people thought it's just not what you do. It's just Al Davis being Al Davis. But really, Paul, the more you think about it, that was a pretty groundbreaking moment because it kind of opened the door to the youth movement in terms of coaching. And we've seen a lot of 30-year-old and certainly, early 40s type coaches get a chance in recent years who maybe didn't in the past. So I feel like Lane Kiffin's a guy who perhaps had his moment the first time around a little early, but here we are a dozen years later, and obviously the time at USC and the time with Nick Saban at Alabama, he seems like a different guy right now. He certainly had a pretty impressive run at Florida Atlantic for 3 years, a school that had done essentially nothing before he got that job. I think it's a different Lane Kiffin who's getting a lot of buzz here in Fayetteville right now.
So if you could, and I know you will, break it down for us in terms of who you think are the legitimate candidates and ultimately how you see it playing out.
Well, absolutely, Paul. I mean, let's be right, point blank, where we were, when we had this conversation, feels like less than a month ago when Chad Morris was fired. I think the names are names that tend to make sense, right? The same kinds of names we talked about last time. Let's be specific here. Names like Mike Norvell, names like Matt Campbell, who got the extension at Iowa State today, Mike Leach at Washington State. Lane Kiffin, if you remember, Paul, was the name we mentioned in our conversation last month, and it hasn't gone away. Obviously, the Gus Malzahn talk was something that was getting some buzz around here, but then he goes out and wins the Iron Bowl, and that's kind of the end to that discussion. So it seems like that relationship between Gus and Arkansas continues to be a little star-crossed, but that name's still out there. You've heard talk about a name like Chris Peterson at Washington after that surprising announcement yesterday. So, names like that, Norvell, Campbell, Peterson, Malzahn, Leach, Kiffin, these names have stayed pretty steady here over the last few weeks. I don't think we've had a ton of change. And by all accounts, Arkansas has tried to vet and do its diligence on all of these names. And it sure seems like Hunter Yurachek, who's not afraid to make a splashy kind of different hire like he made with Eric Musselman and the basketball program 7 months ago, which is obviously getting a lot of buzz around here right now with his great start. Yurachek seems to have pinpointed Lane Kiffin as the kind of young up-and-comer, if you will, the next guy who's got the brand, who's got the style, and got the swagger to take this thing back to at least a competitive place, Paul. We're not talking about winning conference championships at the University of Arkansas right now. We're talking about getting the bowl game, any bowl game. And I think Lane Kiffin's the kind of guy who could achieve that here.
Okay, let's. I mean, there are a lot of names you mentioned, and I don't want to go over every one of them, but some I think are not going to Arkansas, maybe going elsewhere. But I'm most interested in continuing the conversation on Kiffin because, I mean, I believe Kiffin is looking at the job. I don't know if he's made up his mind yet. He has a game this week, so he's probably unlikely to spend a lot of time doing anything other than preparing for Saturday. But is Lane Kiffin hireable at Arkansas would be my most important question. Will they hire? If he said yes, would they? If he agreed to consider it, would they hire him?
Well, I think you know Lane Kiffin's history as well as anybody, and I think the answer to that is yes. And for anybody who's out there questioning Lane Kiffin as a coach, I go back to what we started this conversation talking about, Paul. He's a lifer. He comes from a coaching family. His pops, Monty Kiffin, was the defensive coordinator here in the late 70s for a few years under Lou Holtz, who had several really good seasons that don't get talked about a lot historically. And Lane actually, for whatever it's worth, lived in Fayetteville, in his early years. So back to Kiffin. I think he's grown up. I think he's a brand guy. I sure think he gets Twitter as well as anybody. I mean, nothing against somebody like Nick Saban, whom Lane Kiffin obviously worked for 3 years. But Lane Kiffin gets Twitter. He tweets. He understands the social media angles. He's got a lot to like from an offensive ingenuity standpoint. And I think, again, what he's done at Florida Atlantic over the last few years has been impressive. He won 11 games there his first year. I know they fell off to 5 last year, Paul, but they bounced right back, as you know, to 9 this year. And you just brought up probably the holdup in this situation, which is Florida Atlantic has a conference championship game to go and play on Saturday. And I know folks talk a lot about bowl games these days, but, man, you well know, Paul, conference championships are one of the big talking points for coaches when they try to motivate their teams. And I think Lane Kiffin wants to coach Florida Atlantic in his Conference USA Championship game this weekend. I think he's done a lot of work the last 3 years to rehab his image as a carpetbagger, as a flighty guy, even though I think that stuff is unfounded, and by nature this profession leads to folks trying to move around for a better opportunity. I think he wants to coach that game. I think he will coach that game. I think based on his press conference a few hours ago in Boca Raton, he is not denying the Arkansas angle, but he's trying to focus the conversation on winning his 10th game of the year there at Florida Atlantic. And so I feel like Arkansas probably, as much as I can gather, Paul, and I'm trying to gather as much as I can, they want to let him coach that game. I think that's a good look both ways that they can coach that game. And for the folks who say that's not even realistic, well, I look no further than Scott Frost in Nebraska and Central Florida a couple of years ago. You can make that happen if that's a priority to you. I think Lane Kiffin, for a lot of those reasons and more, would do very well here. And I think there's a lot more smoke and probably ultimately fire to this stuff right now, Kiffin to Arkansas.
JB, would Lane Kiffin be the most sizzle hire that Hunter Yurachek could make?
I think you're on the money. I think when you look at the names I just brought up, and obviously I respect your show, Paul, I think you're right to brush a few of those names off. It's probably not going to happen with several of the guys I mentioned, so what's the point of going back all over them? The one name that keeps coming up here, besides Lane Kiffin, Paul, surprisingly or not, is Mike Leach. Mike Leach at Washington State is a name that seems to have a lot of currency around here. Maybe it's because, like we've talked about before, his propensity to recruiting to the smaller towns like Lubbock, Texas, and Pullman, Washington, lends people to believe that he could get recruits to come and play football in Fayetteville, Arkansas. But I think there's also some concern about Leach. He answers your question about the sizzle, but you also wonder a little bit about the long-term component there. And I know folks can say the same thing about Lane Kiffin right now, But Mike Leach is 15 years older than Lane Kiffin, and I think Lane Kiffin wants a crack at the big time. And as you all know, the SEC is big-time football. So really, in response to that question, Matt Campbell was the other name I would have thrown at you. He re-upped with Iowa State today for big money for however many years. I think Mike Leach is the one other name that continues to get bandied about. And I think ultimately Kiffin, with the youth, with the pedigree, with the Twitter profile, which I know I keep bringing up here, I think that's a name that has more flash and substance to it right now than even a name like Mike Leach.
Not that it's your job, JB. You're a sports talk show host, but if Lane Kiffin called you and said, "Listen, I'm seriously considering this job, but I don't like the roster, I don't like the trajectory, I don't want to go there and get my head bashed in," what would you say to him?
I'd say those are all real feelings and real thoughts, and you're thinking about this job from a 360-degree kind of angle. Look, it's not easy to win here. You know that, Paul. You talk about it on your show, and you say nice things. You say respectful things. You understand the Razorbacks mean a lot to the 3 million people in this state, but it's not easy. You've got to recruit over a large chunk of land. You've got to keep most of the big recruits in this state and go get some primo recruits in Texas, in Louisiana, in Mississippi, in Tennessee, in Missouri. That's difficult. That's a lot of ground to cover. You've got to have a really good staff in place if you're going to make this thing work. And I think that's one of the reasons why, again, Paul, I think it would work here. I think Lane Kiffin has done a really underrated job of cultivating relationships in that coaching fraternity. He's got connections, and I don't know if we need to talk names here, but he's got connections to coaches who could come in here on day one and present a pretty interesting, not only recruiting kind of staff, but also a game day strategist kind of staff. And if some of those names, if even a couple of those names prove to be valid, I think if Lane Kiffin walks in on the first day with guys around him that he believes in, that he thinks are committed to the next, whatever, foreseeable future, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of being in Arkansas, I do think it's a job you can do well at. So I would tell Lane Kiffin, this is doable. You've got the skill set to do it. There's a reason Arkansas wants you, but how badly do you want it? We hear a lot of talk that he really enjoys Boca Raton. How could you not, Paul? Good weather, the beach life. He's a big fisher. He likes to go out and fish on his boat in the open ocean. I know you know that stuff. So, look, Arkansas is a great place. I'm not going to talk it down. There is no beach here. There is no ocean here. So can you adapt to the culture enough to get that coaching game plan that you've got going on operating at a high level? I think if you're committed to it and you've got the right staff, you can most definitely get it done. And if you get it done here, Paul, you well know, you're going to be a rock star legend in this state for life. So it's really a question of what Lane Kiffin wants at this point in his life.
No, and JB, I'm sure you've. I mean, I've heard he's looked around at a staff, and I don't have any doubt. I've heard some of the names as you have. I'm not going to discuss them because he's still coaching a game. But we will stay in touch. This is a very interesting story, JB. Thanks for sharing your incredibly valuable insight. We will talk soon.
Anytime, Paul. Thank you. Great
to talk to Josh Bertuccini, JB in the mornings out in Northwest Arkansas, the voice there of Razorback sports, and certainly the most knowledgeable person. It sounds like Lane Kiffin is definitely in play here. We'll take a break. More of your phone call. Welcome back. We are glad you're here, and let's go to Fox in Louisiana. Fox, welcome to our show. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Paul. Paul, I'm just humbled and totally blessed at how we are in Louisiana.
It's been amazing.
Joe, and I'm telling you, that deal you had with his daddy a while ago about choked me up.
Yeah, that was just an amazing conversation.
That really, well, if you remember Saturday night when they called a timeout and Joe had took his last snap and got that ovation, it was just, I'll never forget that. I mean, you used to live in Freeport, and you know kind of how we are. We Duck Dynasty, redneck. Everybody now goes to Walmart, high-fiving and say, "Go Tigers." And it's just amazing that how blessed our little old state with the best quarterback in the NFL and the best collegiate one. We're really, really blessed. And I wanted to ask you, Paul, about when he took Joe out, he was tied for the record. Does Georgia game count for Joe's stats this year?
Yeah, I think all the games count.
The playoffs and all?
I believe so. Now, again, what we're talking about are season stats. We're not talking about regular season playoffs. I mean, it's all encompassing.
Well, if Joe don't break it, then we'll probably lose. It looks pretty. I didn't know if the regular season was all it was or not. But have you ever seen a team accelerate like LSU has?
No, it's one of the great stories of all time.
We are truly blessed. We really are.
Well,
thank you, Paul. I just want
thank
to
you.
That and tell you how happy we are in Louisiana.
Well, I am thrilled to hear from you, and we really enjoyed talking to Joe's dad tonight. Tony is in Georgia, and you are next up. Hey, Tony.
Hey, what's going on, Paul? How you feeling
we're doing well,
there, bud?
I feel great. Thank you.
Oh, good. Well, I don't want to crawfish on you, but I was going to talk about Clemson and joining the SEC if they want to, because they're going to roll through us. But then all your callers jumped on them like a duck on a June bug, and I said, no, maybe I'll change stream if Paul will allow me to. I mean, immediately I called and got put on hold, and, man, they jumped on him and basically were mirroring what I was trying to say anyway. SEC needs to expand, and Clemson needs to be invited, and we'll see how it rolls from there. What do you think?
Totally agree with you on that, Tony. Thanks for sharing that.
Yep. Real quick, Paul. Several weeks back, South Carolina beat Georgia, and when everybody was down on them, and your guys in the back, they were like, Paul, is Georgia done? And you were like, nope, I'm not ready to say that. And you said because of Kirby Smart. And then every week I watch, when we played Florida, they were talking about, well, Kirk Herbstreit. Well, Florida's the best one-loss team there is, and what Georgia do. And then Auburn and on and on and on. And I guess what I'm trying to say is don't count us out, Paul. Don't count us out.
No, listen, I definitely believe in Kirby because I know him well, and I happen to think he's a fantastic coach. I'm just my only concern, and it's a legitimate one, and you would probably share it, is the personnel. I think George is always capable. I just don't know how diminished that offensive firepower is right now.
And that's the same thing. I'd feel if Kirby had a little smoke screen going and Cager come rolling out there after, and on and on, and the kid gets taken out of the Tech game for being dumb, and then I'm like that. But I look at it. My wife and I went to the Rose Bowl, and it was just a remarkable trip. And Baker Mayfield, he was hot, and I got nothing against the quarterback at LSU. He's phenomenal, and he's having a great year. But I'm just saying, we got the best defense out there. They got the best offense. It should be a lot of fun. I'm hoping.
Well, great to hear from you, Tony. Thank you very, very much. Let's go to Bobby in Louisiana. Hello, Bobby.
How you doing, Paul? I just wanted to, and thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I wanted to bring up something about the playoff committee. I've listened to them, and they say they take into consideration injuries that you have to you. As far as LSU goes, I don't know how many teams, especially defensive teams, could have lost their two defensive tackles the second game of the season, and they didn't make their way back until probably Auburn. They played sporadically because they wasn't in shape when we played Auburn. But we also had some other defensive people, Delpert, Fulton, Divinity.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
And the thing. They're supposed to take these injuries in consideration. And talking about the body of work, well, you take those defensive players off of any team anywhere, and you might not have the best defensive stats, but then you put them all together for your last game, and you get a 50-7 game. So I just thought I'd bring that up.
Well, no, I think it's a really good point, and I heard Coach O talk about Aranda, and that was the best we've seen. And if that defense shows up against Georgia, we know what's going to happen. And I think that's been the missing ingredient all year long is the stout LSU defense, because we know the offense has been in outer space. Great to have you on. We're heading to a break. We still have about 35 minutes to go on what has been a pretty interesting day. I hope you heard the beginning of the show with Stephen A. Smith. Never disappoints. Tonight was just amazing, and so many other great guests, including Joe Burrow's dad. We will
won at Bama by hanging 46 points on them. It snapped Alabama's 8-game winning streak against LSU. A week later, we saw what happened with star quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, injuring his hip against Mississippi State, an injury that would require season-ending surgery. Mac Jones takes over at quarterback, and he was at that position this past Saturday in the Iron Bowl when Auburn put up 48 points in an upset over their in-state rival, essentially knocking Alabama out of playoff consideration. And again, we are now entering something we've never seen before, and that is a college football playoff without Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide. And the great Paul Finebaum is with us here. And I've heard it speculated. I will ask it to you, whose opinion on this I think I value more than anyone's. Do we have to start getting used to this? Is the era of Nick Saban dominating college football coming to an end?
Yes, it is. And it's been happening very slowly for a couple of years. But I think over the last couple of months, we've seen it. It started with the 28-point blowout to Clemson. Saban said, we have to get the Alabama factor back. It didn't happen. It has been a really disappointing season. People are saying, are you kidding? Alabama went 10-2, and they're still ranked in the top 10. But that's the difference at Alabama. A couple of reasons why, Greeny. Staff turnover has been a constant churn, especially on the defensive side. Recruiting is an issue. They're still number 2 or 3 in the recruiting, but they're being pressed hard by Clemson and Georgia. And I'll say this. I know that everyone will be surprised to know that I covered the end of Bear Bryant's tenure about 38 years ago as a young reporter. Yes, young. And I saw some of the very same signs. He's considered the greatest coach of all time. Saban surpassed him. It looks very similar.
To the end of Bear Bryant's era, because slowly but surely people chip away. If I were to agree with you in this circumstance, I would say that I don't believe Alabama has come back to the pack. I think they sort of set a template, a blueprint that others have followed and others have sort of caught up. Dabo Swinney has caught up. Georgia is coming on strong. Ohio State, perhaps you could say, has caught up. What do you see?
I think it's crazy to sit here and say that Nick Saban and Alabama are done. I mean, 2 years ago, he wins the national championship. Last year, they lose one game in the national championship.
And we're not saying he's done. We're saying this dynasty window is closing very tightly.
They're the youngest team in America. No team has played more true freshmen than Alabama. Guess what happens in 2 years? All those true freshmen are going to be juniors. They're going to be really good football players. The passion, did you watch Saban on the field? Sure. Even in that loss. Does this look like a guy who's going to lose his dynasty? The passion that he has on the football field?
One last point to make, Dan. The difference between then and now is we're talking about this on a daily basis. That is a problem when you're a legendary coach and you're 68 years old.
I think when you're great, Nick Saban's the greatest college football coach ever, arguably. When you're great, you decide when it's over.
Yeah.
And I don't think you let others.
I don't know.
You sound like an Alabama fan. Welcome back. We're glad you're here. And, we talked enough about the Kiffin situation, but I think it's real. A lot of names out there he is considering trying to get there, and whether it's a matter whether Lane wants the job or not. Let's grab some more phone calls here, and Rick is in South Carolina. Hello, Rick.
Hey, Paul. Hey, I just wanted to remind the Clemson callers and the gentleman who thinks Clemson had run to the east that the last time Clem and his son showed up in Athens, they took a 45-21 beatdown, and I was there to witness it. And then I got a playoff scenario for you that kind of you and Seth really sidestepped a little bit. So let's say Ohio State wins, Clemson wins, Baylor beats Oklahoma, Oregon beats Utah, and UGA loses by a field goal or less. So that leaves Baylor the only one loss, but they would only have one win against a ranked opponent, and that would be in that championship game, Oklahoma. So then you got the Bulldogs beating what the AP current ranking is. Number 7 Florida, 11 Auburn, which had the wins over Oregon and Alabama, and number 14 Notre Dame. Just curious what your thoughts on that kind of scenario might work out as.
Yeah, listen, I don't think Baylor's getting no matter what. I just think they would get edged out. Rick, I know you can go to the 7th and 8th possibility. I think it's a little bit ridiculous. I think it's ultimately going to come down to Utah or Oklahoma, which to me is not a great choice because I don't think either one has any chance against the other three. Thank you very, very much. John is up next. Hey, John.
Hey, John from Florida, right?
Yes, John. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was calling in ever since the Alabama game. That the runoff on the time, where they ran the ball down. Why don't they go ahead and make these the college teams do like the pros? There's no stopping the clock to move the chains, 2 feet in bounds. You're prepping these people, the athletes for the pros.
Well, John, listen. I appreciate your question. I'm not sure I'm really too influential with the NCAA in terms of changing college football rule, but I think it makes sense.
I don't know. This is a discussion that maybe if we start talking about it, maybe they'll do something with it.
Well, I will. Next time I get a coach on who's on the rules committee, I will put it to him. Thank you for the call. I do appreciate it. Easy is in Mississippi. Hello, Easy.
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you for the call.
All right. Paul, do you all understand that Clemson is the national champion? Do you all understand they won 25, I believe, straight games?
Yes, I'm well aware of that.
You all aware of it?
Yeah, I try my best to keep up with college football. I don't, know much about it, but I've heard that. I've heard that rumor.
It just seems to me you all don't realize that, and they are the national champions. Till somebody else win, and they can't really help the conference they're in and who they play, but yet and still they don't play nobody, but they win the national championship. They win the national championship, but they don't play nobody, you say. They don't play nobody, but they win the national championship. And Dabo Swinney, he talks and talks well, and I believe he's a fantastic man. He talks good. You bash him all the time. And then Nick Saban can say what he want to say, talking about Auburn as the best team they done played so far. He must have forgot about LSU. Did he lose against them?
Thanks, Easy. Appreciate that very much. Jack is in North Carolina. Hello, Jack.
Yeah, Paul. I was wondering which conference championship game intrigues you most.
Probably the either the Pac-12 or the Big 12. I mean, really the other three don't mean very much to me at all. And I'm not being disparaging about the SEC game, but I think the fact that LSU does not have to win the game takes a little bit of the edge off. I mean, it's all about Georgia to me.
What do you think happens if Ohio State slips up?
Nothing. I think Ohio State will still be in the playoffs. It depends on. I don't think they'd fall beyond the third position because Ohio State with one loss is still better than the number 4 team. I mean, tell me a good number 4 team, unless Georgia beats LSU.
Do you think if that happens, Georgia busts up to second and LSU drops to 4th?
Okay, let's say that's the only upset. Ohio State wins, Clemson wins, and obviously Georgia wins. So Georgia would, I think it depends. There are a couple of interesting things about that. If LSU, Well, hold on. I was about to say, if LSU and Georgia were to play, it depends on where the rankings are, because, I mean, the only way it would be an issue if Georgia and LSU were second and third, which I cannot imagine that happening, then that game probably would not be in Atlanta, because you can't have a lower seed with a geographical advantage. But if you moved LSU to 4th and Georgia 3, then you'd have LSU play, obviously, Ohio State, and Georgia would play Clemson, which would be a pretty intriguing game.
Mm-hmm. Now, last question, Paul. I've heard rumor that if Oklahoma makes it through, they possibly could take the 4th spot. Why do they take precedence over Baylor if they win that game?
You saying if Oklahoma beats Baylor?
Yeah, but if Baylor wins, why would they not take the 4th spot?
Oh, you're saying, well, why wouldn't Baylor? Baylor's non-conference schedule is really weak, and I think that's what's hurting them. So if they beat Oklahoma, then I think the game moves out west. Listen, we're an hour. We're not an hour. We're 30 minutes away from finding out. This is not the most exciting college football reveal, but really, I think Utah will be ahead of Oklahoma. I'm not sure, but whatever happens tonight is not going to really matter very much. It doesn't matter where Georgia is. It really doesn't matter. I think LSU will stay the same, but LSU could trump Ohio State with a win because they would have a better victory. Thank you for the call. Really do appreciate it. Let's check out Jeff in Oakland. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, Paul. So thanks for rerunning the piece from this morning with your semi-debate with Dan Orlovsky. I just wanted to kind of comment, if I could drop into that conversation to say Nick Saban is not going to roll back the same squad, the same coaching squad for next year. And I think from the comments that he made, kind of in press, both after the Clemson game and kind of pretty much this season, including the LSU game, he wants to get back to playing kind of Nick Saban defense. And I think in his, he's going to want to bring somebody on board, kind of call them co-defensive coordinator, but somebody who's directly from his tree, who has worked for him before and is a proven quantity. And the first two names that kind of come to my mind, if I'm looking at that, is number one, somebody who I think is in trouble as a head coach is Mark D'Antonio. And the second name is Glenn Schumann out of Georgia, who's linebacker coach, who's gone out there, but who's a Bama player, former Bama player, and has coached for Nick. And then, if not somebody from the direct tree, possibly one of the rehab candidates, somebody who's both been kind of failed head coaches, but were successful at, on the defensive side. And, I give you a list of four, which would be Steve Adazio, who just got canned at BC, Roy Taggart, who was successful as a recruiter, but not really as a head coach, Randy Shannon, who was, successful as a recruiter and a defensive coach, but not a head coach, and Chris Ash. And all four of them are both recruiters.
Yeah, Jeff, I agree. First of all, let me jump in quickly before we have to go. D'Antonio's not. I'm not sure what his status is right now, but I cannot imagine him leaving Michigan State and coming down and working with Nick. But maybe as a consultant. Hey, I hate to run. You brought up some very good names, and I agree with you. Saban will wait because the trickle down has not occurred yet. There's still some very iffy coaches out there that may or may not be fired. This weekend is going to solve some of those issues. We're up against a break. We still have a couple of minutes to go on a Tuesday afternoon.
Obviously, the numbers say they're really good, but I don't go by that. I go by what I see on tape, and they do a tremendous job. Defensively, we've had them on tape. I know we overlapped on Auburn and Florida, and I think Dave Aranda does a tremendous job. They've got a very experienced secondary, talented up front, play a lot of players, just a tremendous overall program. And what Coach Ogeron's been able to do with his program from a standpoint of winning big games, playing top 25, top 10 opponents. I think he's been as good as anybody in the country. And I got a lot of respect for him. I always have. I've known him for a long time. And his teams take on his personality, which is toughness, physical, and cut it loose. So this will be as great a challenge as we've had. I know since I've been here as far as playing an opponent, and our players have earned this opportunity. We didn't back our way into this game. We earned our way into this game. And we're looking forward to the opportunity to play in what is probably one of the greatest stages, I've said it over and over, in all of college football.
Kirby, in your experience as a head coach, sometimes when a new quarterback coach or offensive coordinator come in, is there sometimes a transition period for a quarterback? And do you think Jake has experienced any of that this year at all?
No, I don't think so. We really don't have a new quarterback coach because it's the same guy that did it last year, different coordinator. But I don't think, if anything, they're probably better on the same page because they're in a second year of being in the room together. So I think that's a big part of growth and growing up and being able to do things. Biggest difference this year is who's healthy, who's out there playing. I mean, 3 guys are in the NFL that were out there playing last year, and really 5 when you count Holyfield and Nada. So there's not been a level of consistency with the perimeter skill that there probably was last year. That's the biggest difference.
Hey, Coach, is there an update on DeAndre Swift's injury going into next game? I think it's pretty important.
Yeah, we're hopeful that he's going to be able to play.
Why is it important for guys like that to kind of handle whatever's going on with George right now?
Well, it's important to have a big brother. I mean, we all have mentors, and you grow as a young player. I mean, young players across the country, you have to grow up.
Welcome back. A couple of minutes to go, and I'm in on this Tuesday evening.
Good afternoon, Paul Finebaum in New York City.
Hey there.
I like saying that. New York, New York. It sounds so nice, I got to say it twice. New York, New York. That's Johnny Winter tune. You know, Paul, let me kind of take a moment to bring the nation in on this, because there's a lot of new people to your program. They see you on TV, and now they're fascinated by you, although you've been fascinating for 20 years. You know, people, this is what happens when you depend on the Alabama fans to come in and talk about football. When they get beat, they don't show up. And this, you're witnessing right live today, Tuesday, no playoff conversation, didn't make no statement over the weekend, and their fans ain't talking at all. I mean, even the guy just hollering, kiss them old wings, kiss them old wings, them old rings. Hell, there's marriages, there's people who throw the damn ring off the bridge in less than 2 years. Them's old rings. Them rings don't count no more. The value of them rings has depreciated to nothing. You can get them on eBay. Now, Paul, this is a new conversation that we're going to have. This strength of record. I've been talking sports with you for 20 years. And this strength of record conversation just came up this year. Now, can you imagine interviewing the guy that does that? Well, what do you do, sir? Well, I'm the strength of record analyst. Well, what exactly do you do? Well, I analyze teams that you're supposed to beat the living hell out of and see that it's done right. I mean, you're supposed to beat them teams. You mean there's a category and a desk and a paycheck for that? Hell, sign me up now. I want that job. I'm better than anybody at it. I want that job, Paul Finebaum. You can do it. Strength of record. Competition, the level of competition don't count. You ain't got to play nobody. Well, they beat them well. They beat them as good as they did the last team that sucked. I want that job, Paul Finebaum. War damn Eagle. Have a good day.
Thank you, man. Great to have you on the show. We wondered where the Alabama fans were, especially the ones that run their mouth incessantly. Well, we found one. Joe in Red Bay, Alabama.
We don't like them. We don't like them kind of people, Paul. But you know what? He made a good point. He probably does buy rings off eBay because Auburn sure ain't got none, and they wouldn't know what to do with them anyhow if they had a ring. But hey, we're here. I mean,
hey Joe, you gonna have a ring this year?
Paul, I seen the same game you did, and you know that blame well. If we correct just one mistake, we beat Auburn and we beat LSU.
Well, guess what, Joe? I don't know. Guess what? Hey, Joe, the time to correct the mistakes is before the game and during the game. And the last time I saw Alabama make a play in that game, they looked like the Keystone Cops with 12 men on the field. So don't tell me about correcting mistakes, okay?
Oh, Finebaum, why are you trying to aggravate me?
I'm not trying to aggravate you. I'm just spitting out the truth. We talked to you. Let's talk to one more Alabama fan. Mr. Kiss the Rings legend is next.
Yeah, we got beat, Paul. The haters are celebrating. Hate. The haters are celebrating. It's your day to hate, haters. Celebrate. I don't mind, Paul. They don't have to kiss the rings. I got something else they can kiss, though. I mean, they hate on Alabama all they want. Go out and get you 5 championships in 12 years, haters. That's what you do. Yeah, little brother beat us. Go give Gus Malzahn another 7 years and $49 million, morons. That's what you go do. I mean, anybody that knew football knew this wasn't our year anyway. Our defense sucks. I roll with it as long as I could ride with it. But, hey, we ride together, we win together, we lose together. We still friggin' Alabama. We still the conversation at the end of the day. Let's see how good them playoffs are now, Paul. Let's see how good them ratings are now without Alabama and Utah in it. Let's see how that works for college football if you don't want the king up in there. Let the haters hate, Paul. At the end of the day, they don't have as many rings as us. Go out and win you one. What do you want, LSU? Clemson and Ohio State are better than you. You ain't going to win nothing at the end of the day. What did you win, Auburn? So what? You still a 3-loss team. You still ain't Alabama. You don't have to kiss the ring. All you haters can kiss something else. Legend out.
Man, the new narrative. What's that, guys? Hey, guys, let me go back to the studio. I mean, that was quite a double dip there of Alabama fans.
That's good they came out. Yeah, it only took Tuesday with a minute to go in the show.
And they know when the show ends, too, so that might have been intentional without the timing of those calls.
Yeah, it was good, because you get out there and you kind of say, oh, yeah. I mean, Paul, it sounded to me like go win one. We've got 5 and 12 years. Didn't look to the future at all.
I remember
Didn't say
when
we'll be back next year.
I remember when it was 5 and 9.
Yeah. It's going to be 5 and 13, 5 and 14. Oh, yeah, we won 5 this century.
Yeah, that's a great part about being an Alabama fan. If you don't win one this year, you can talk about the ones you used to win.
Or you can make some up.
Right, or just add one to your total either way, regardless.
They got 18, 19,
20
by 20.
20 sounds better.
20 by 20.
20 sounds better. It's a nice round number,
good to hear
easy to remember.
Paul.
Anyway, we certainly ended on a bang, a Roll Tide bang. Anyway, thanks for the show. We'll see you again tomorrow. We will review and regurgitate what happens coming up here in a couple of minutes with the college football rankings. And we're off and running from New York, and what a great day it's been. The snow has stopped, but the fireworks are here.
Anything that I do, I'm cognizant of the fact that I recognize somebody greater than myself. And so when you recognize that, it's important because it disciplines you because you know it's not just about you.
I think he's the most unique broadcaster in the industry.
I think I'm on to this something with Clemson and little man syndrome because Dabo gets on TV and starts talking about UGA. What does Dabo have to prove? He's won 2 national championships. Why does he care about Georgia?
Listen, I would put Oklahoma in over Utah. I mean,
what I'm thinking.
Not personal against Utah. I've never been there and really don't care if I ever go.
I heard somebody on ESPN saying that Georgia had no chance against LSU. I imagine Georgia will show up and suit up and play, don't you?
No, I do. I mean, my argument today wasn't about the schedule. It was just about Dabo whining about nothing. I said it. I have really virtually nothing else to add.
But you know something, Paul? I think something that Alabama fans have lost, it's humility. You can't expect to win all the time.
What I saw Saturday night in Baton Rouge was beyond embarrassing. And as someone who has always defended Jimbo Fisher, that's inexcusable.
I'm going to call you back and I'm going to have you eat crow.
You're not going to make me eat crow.
No, I did dream of playing great football at the college level, but if I said I dreamed all these other things happening, that would be a lie. But unbelievable, the whole thing that LSU, the team, and Joe this year. I mean, it's I told somebody, I mean, you could write a fiction book about it and make all that up, but even then, probably somebody wouldn't believe it.
And I was wondering, given the way the Gators played this year, especially the way we finished, do you think we'll be at that elite level come next season? And do you think the expectation will be an SEC championship next year?
Listen, it's always difficult to predict a championship, but I think this program is already very, very close to an elite level.